Willy and DMase coming at you here on a Tuesday. Beautiful day in Nashville. Can everybody just take a quick deep breath? Whew. Yesterday, we started 100 miles an hour and kept going the entire 3 hours. It was crazy. And it was DMase's first day back. It was Nick's first day back from a long vacation. We didn't even get a chance to catch up because of all the craziness
Absolutely.
that happened with the Predators on the first day of free agency. And it was the talk of the league. I don't care what channel you go to. Go to the Canadian channels, go to the NHL network, go to the hockey shows that are podcasting. Nashville was the number one story in the league yesterday. Now, what is that worth October 5th or October 10th? Nothing. As we've said before, winning the press conference in July is not what wins you the championship.
No,
but
not at all.
But the Predators definitely made a big splash and on paper improved their team. And Barry Trotz at his press conference yesterday was the first to say that the pieces have to fit. Games aren't won in the summer. But everybody feels pretty good about what the team looks like. Now, did they get a little bit older? Yeah. And we're going to get into all of that during the show today. But we wanted to just sort of reset for a second. And we'll bring Max Hers on, who was at the press conference yesterday with Barry Trotz. We'll get his insights with the Predators radio. But DMase, I wanted to get your thoughts on your vacation. You went on this long European. We had a lot of fun at your expense. We were like, where is DMase? What country is DMase in? We were looking at Instagram. We're like, okay, today's in Italy. Okay, today's in France. But just give us a quick recap of what you saw. Like that's a pretty fun time.
Yeah, it was a fun trip. All because of my daughter Bailey Mason. She really put the whole trip together. You're talking about a 24, 25-year-old young lady, and this is how responsible she is. Now, her mom had something, she helped out too, but it was to a point that I kind of felt bad. She stressed herself out because she wanted to make the trip a perfect trip for everybody. And, it was the best trip that we had been on together in a long time. All of us. So we stopped at Florence first. I love Florence. I'm a Florence guy. It's laid back, historic. The pasta and the pizza is just that's all I ate, Willie and Nick. It's pasta and pizza. I mean, I couldn't get enough of it. But
now, was there a difference over there? Because you noticed like really good pasta.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we went to this wine vineyard. And the wine was exceptional. Even my son had a couple of sips of wine. My daughter had some. She's not really a big wine person or alcohol person anyway. DJ isn't either. But he when in Florence or France or wherever you're at, you do as they do. So we had some wine at the really nice vineyard. Then end up buying cases of wine, which will be here hopefully within the next month. So I will, bring you guys a bottle of that so you can have.
Does it have a wax covering on it, or is it like
It was from a vineyard.
Okay.
The vineyard we were at was one of the oldest vineyards, and they grow olives on that vineyard. Obviously different kinds of wines. And the lady that was sort of took us sort of through the first part of the wine vineyard, she talked about where in Tuscan, where we were, these are some of the sort of older parts. And she told us how they sort of, how they would have to keep the wine and a cheese in certain places underneath ground and keep it cool and all this stuff. It was just in the dark. It was just a really good sort of history lesson. So we were in Florence for 3-4 days, then traveled to Paris. Now Paris is, if anybody's been there, Paris is like New York times 2.
Really?
Yes, it and we saw some of the stuff.
I have an image of New York, and I've spent a lot of time in New York. I've never been to Paris, but I wouldn't think that they're
they are like
because New York, I think skyscrapers everywhere and hustle and bustle
minus
everywhere.
the skyscrapers. Now
Okay.
minus the skyscrapers, but the hustle and bustle.
They've got it.
They got it, and they got it in droves. I mean, and maybe because that was my first time, myself and Derek's first time DJ being there. But Marcy and Bailey, they had been there prior. Because they love shopping. So Paris is a place you go shop and see a lot of great things. Obviously, the Eiffel Tower. I had never seen the Eiffel Tower up close, and it was wonderful. Right at sunset, the every hour on the hour after sunset, the Eiffel Tower, it lights up with these lights, and you could just see it from miles away. And a lot of people were there. So we made trip to the Eiffel Tower a few times just to sort of relax at the end of the evening, which the evening it got dark around 11 o'clock. I think I told you guys that yesterday. It got dark around 10:30, 11. So it throws us off. And then they were doing this protest, which we didn't get to see, but they were doing this protest in a part of Paris where I guess they were the election, their election was getting ready to go on. And the people were protesting by, using a bathroom in the canals. Like,
what?
Yes, these people were using, because what they were saying is all of it sort of, if I understood it right, all of it sort of washes past the politicians, places that they work. So all this, smell and everything sort of goes along their way, and then they're going to have in this canal, they're going to do some of the Olympic races or something like that. So what would you call a president in that country? Is
prime
it
minister?
Prime minister, yeah, but
Okay.
prime minister. So I guess the prime minister, wanted to show that the water's clean. So they were, I think it's a she. Was getting in the water, was going to get in the water.
Wetsuit or just like regular bathing?
I don't know, because we didn't get a chance to see it, but we heard about it. So our thing was,
so you didn't jump in there.
No, hell no. So we wanted to go to the canal and see, but I think we were in the wrong part of Paris. I think they were in another part of Paris. So they had their protests going on in regards to that and their election, and then they were setting up things for the Olympics. You saw stages being built, roads were cut off. But we had a wonderful time sort of visiting different areas and then getting to shop and all that other stuff and having some great dinners as a family. And then from there, we spent 4 or 5 days in Paris. Then we went to, we ended in Amsterdam. Now, Amsterdam, you got to love Amsterdam, because Amsterdam believes in 420 and they believe in it heavy. And this is the crazy part about Amsterdam. It's not.
That's another place I've never been, but you hear a lot of things.
You need to go. Yeah. It's like, because Amsterdam it's just like, listen, you be who you are. Just do like it's not like, we're judging. It's just be your person. You got to live in your body. Be your person. We accept it. We're receptive to, just do you. Don't bother. Just do you. And that's how it was. But they believed in 420, which I believe in 420, which made that a marriage, between me and Amsterdam. Yeah, I had to be me. I had to be me. So, but we enjoyed Amsterdam. We had a really good time. Took a boat ride through the canals for 2 hours and got a history lesson on that. The people were great. The food was great. We went to this one French fry place that was one of the world-renowned fry places. The line was so long. I mean, you got to get there early. Those fries were good. I've never tasted no fries those fries were good.
Wow.
So they beat McDonald's on a good day.
Oh hell, they're stomped McDonald's.
Ooh,
on McDonald's on their worst day and McDonald's best day, they still would beat McDonald's in a fry tasting contest.
That's fair.
So, and then right next door to it, it was this cookie place. And if you know me, I love cookies. Boy, oh boy. We got, I think the first time we went, we ended up getting like 10 cookies for all of us. There's 4 of us. So we getting up 10 cookies. My son's a cookie monster too. So he loves cookies. And then right before the boat ride later on that day, I went back and got 5 more cookies. So we were all cookied out, but we enjoyed Amsterdam. I would love to go back. I would recommend anyone that loves to travel. If you haven't been to Amsterdam, please go to Amsterdam. It's a cool place to visit. Again, I want to go back just to stay a little bit longer. But yeah, we enjoyed it. We have fun. I thank my lovely daughter who put most of it together. I wish she would have paid for it too, but she didn't. Her mom and I had to pay for it, but she did such a wonderful job at putting the trip together for us, and we had a ball. I love traveling with my kids, and I love traveling with my ex-wife. Because we just have fun when we're together. We enjoy one another, and they jones me all the time. I swear. As my son would call, he trolls me 24/7. And it just seems like once he starts trolling me, everybody else just gets on me, and I just got to walk away. So, but yeah, well, we had a great time. 2 weeks was great, but I couldn't wait to get back, just to be in my own bed, to see my dogs. And the kids wanted to see their dogs too, and I'm sure they wanted to be in their own beds and their mom as well. So, but we enjoyed the trip. We try to do at least one of these big trips a year. So this was the big one. So everybody, it was a much needed trip. So we did it. We loved it. Can't wait for my wine to get here. And if I could ship the 420, I would have, but I don't want to be in nobody's jail. Okay, so
We'll leave it there.
Exactly. I don't want to be in nobody's prison. So
let's
just leave it there.
You said when you've got to be in your own body when you're in Amsterdam. Another guy that loves being in his own body is Max Hurst, and he is on the line with us right now. He was at the press conference yesterday for Barry Trotz, and he's on the road right now himself. He's heading back to his homeland. He is a Yinzer, as he likes to say, heading for Pittsburgh and then on up to the Northeast for a little vacay. But we wanted to get his perspective on the press conference yesterday with Barry Trotz. Max, what's going on?
I honestly didn't want you guys to bring me on because I was enjoying that so much from DMase. That was great.
You were on a little mental European tour just as you were driving along in northern Kentucky or wherever the heck you are, right?
I missed the beginning. DMase, were you talking about how the river has fecal matter in it?
Yes, in Paris. Yeah. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, that is nuts.
Yes, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. So we were trying to look for it, Max. We couldn't find it, but we knew they were doing it. So
it's probably better that you couldn't find.
That's kind of my thought. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sitting here. I pulled over because the Preds schedule just came out, and I'm trying to digest it all at once. Have you gotten a glance at it, Willie?
I'm glancing at it right now for the first time, and it is out. They announced, of course, the home opener, and it's it's interesting. The first game of the year is against. Wait, am I looking at this right? No, I'm looking at last year's. I'm trying to get it all together. I want to look at it as a big. Almost like you would see on your wallet or on a wall, but I'm looking at it game by game. I guess it's not out there yet.
I tweeted both versions of it, Willie. So go take a look at that.
Okay.
The things that are standing out to me, 13 Saturdays in Smashville, which is awesome, including the Red Wings, the second week of the season, which will be a lot of fun. Thanksgiving Eve and Black Friday afternoon at home against the Flyers on Wednesday night and the Lightning on Friday afternoon.
Oh, boy.
Stamkos' return to Tampa will be early on Monday, October 28th.
Get it out of the way. Mm-hmm. Man, that will be emotional.
The Preds will also be there for a preseason game. So, I mean, who knows if he goes to that. Then
I'm going to guess they're going to hold off on that. I'm just going to make the call right now. He's not going. He's not going.
CMAs are a little bit later this year. So the CMA road trip is in mid-November, but it's the usual Colorado, all three Western Canada, and Seattle. And then here's the crazy road trip. Over New Year's, a 5-game road trip this is insane. It starts and ends in Winnipeg. Winnipeg on December 30th, then Minnesota at 7 in on New Year's Eve, then 2 days off, Vancouver, Calgary. So that's 2 back-to-backs in 6 days around New Year's. And then 2 days off after Calgary to go back to Winnipeg.
What?
So is it basically
it's-
a Canadian trip? That's what it is.
I've been
2
saying this
games.
since they came into the league, but Seattle has messed up the schedule in the
Yeah.
West. And now you got Utah in there. And now we're seeing the after effects
Well,
of that.
here's my last point is about Utah. So the way the division scheduling works, there's one team in your division that only comes to you once instead of twice, and there's one team in your division you only go to once. And the Preds are only going to Utah once. They are in the Preds division. Preds are only going there once, and it is the 4th to last game of the season. So the Preds' first visit to Utah will not come until April 10th.
Now, are they playing in the basketball arena for the first couple of years?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not
Yes.
perfectly configured, Max. I've read a little bit about this. I think they have to do some things with that, or maybe even build a whole nother building eventually.
Yeah, they're going to have to do some major modifications long term, but it's going to be like when the Islanders played at the Brooklyn Nets arena, but worse. It's the capacity is going to be, I think, between 10 and 12,000 because of obstructed view.
Now, Max, looking at their schedule, I'm trying to pull it up. I can't. Only thing they're showing is the first home game. I think it's October 10th versus the Dallas Stars. Just you glancing over, which part of the schedule are you looking forward to? Is it that Canadian road trip because of the complexity of it, or is it another part of the schedule that you will be paying attention to?
The most home heavy months, which get me excited for the fans. October, the first month, is very home heavy, which is great with all the moves the Preds have made to get everybody to see Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea for the first time. The opener is at home on Thursday, October 10th, like you said, against the Stars. Then one road game after that, then a 4-game homestand. So for the whole month, 7 of the first. Oh wait, I'm going to go into November actually. 9 of the first 12 games are at home, including 3 Saturdays, including Red Wings and Avs on Saturdays. And then February, which is disrupted for 2 weeks by the Four Nations tournament, which is a mini World Cup that is Canada, U.S., Finland, and Sweden. And we already know Forsberg and Saros will be in that tournament. So February has a 2-week break in it. But around that break, it's 6 home games and 2 road games.
Wow.
Including a 4-game homestand with a weekend back-to-back, Avs and Devils, both at 5 o'clock on a Saturday and a Sunday, February 22nd and 23rd.
I'm looking, and I just glanced over this one time, but just in the Jonathan Marchessault being an original, what do they call them? The Misfits, right? An original Vegas Golden Knight. The first trip to Vegas is not until April. Right.
Yeah, and that's the only time. Wow. So that'll be
the first and only regular season trip is in Vegas very late in the season in April. Yeah.
The Preds' last road trip of the season is to 2 Western Conference cities that they only go to once, in Utah and Las Vegas, and those are the last 2 road games of the regular season. Good call.
Max, can you stick around? I know you're on the road. Where actually, can you afford to be pulled over, or maybe you'd just like to continue on down the road and still chat with us on the other side of the break? Because I want to get into the press conference yesterday.
Yeah, we can talk about what I actually came on to talk about.
This was sort of breaking news, though, so we wanted to get that to you. The schedule is out, and you can start making your plans for the big. We don't have the national TV schedule or anything like that just yet, so sit tight on that one. But the schedule is out. It's always fun to glance that. Not quite as simple as looking at the NFL schedule and saying win, loss, like we always do. It take a while to go through 82 games and predict that at this point, but you can kind of look at how it shapes up. There's always the long road trip in the CMAs. There's always the break at the All-Star area in February that you're kind of wondering what's going on there. And as Max mentioned, the Four Nations tournament is going to be the featured thing during the middle of the regular schedule. That's something you'll have to kind of wrap your arms around. And then there's that long road trip that always coincides with March Madness when there's the SEC tournament going on in Nashville. So when we come back, Max will talk about yesterday, a huge press conference. And I'm not going to use the term win the press conference, but I am. This was where a lot of people nationally were focused on this city because of the splash the Predators made with the enormous free agent signings of Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, and then on a lesser level, Scott Wedgwood, a backup goalie, and also re-signing Alex Carrier to stay in Nashville. Elliot Friedman is going to join us at noon, and then we will get into some football stuff. We've got Teron Davenport and Tim Hasselbeck at during the 1 o'clock hour, which is going to be a great hour for us here today. So we've got full speed ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Stick around. You're watching and listening to Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game.
You alluded to it earlier. Do you guys envision Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist staying together, and Stamkos and Marchessault with Evangelista or someone else?
I am not the coach. I will let the coach. I learned this one. If I do the lines and they don't work, I'll get blamed for it, or you force things. I told you guys about the laser beams. I got to play this guy. I'm going to let that play out with Bruno. Bruno will talk to the players. He'll get a feel for it.
It's Max Hers asking the question yesterday to Barry Trotz. By the way, just a side note, who was asking the questions and who was covering the press conference yesterday? Max Hurst, Robbie Stanley, Nick Keyser from our staff. So if you were wondering before where you want to get the insights of people that follow the team, and this is going to be a very interesting year. I don't know what's going to happen, but there will be spotlight on this team that maybe we haven't had in this city for a few years as they have loaded up and gone for it. This station for over a decade has been the one that has given you the in-depth coverage, the detailed coverage with hosts that pay attention and follow the team from start to finish. And that is worth noting. And I know all of you listening, we have seen the progress. We have seen the benefits of that, especially in the last year or two. And it has been very, very exciting. The listenership of this station as a whole, that's about all I can say. But I just wanted to make that point because listen to that whole press conference. It's over 30 minutes. It's our people that are asking the questions. So Max was on hand. So, Max, what did you think of that answer there? Because it was interesting. Andrew Burnett went on with Jared about an hour after that, and Jared kind of asked the coach the same kind of questions. But Barry Trotz gave the answer that probably a GM should give.
First of all, Willie, I like the fire, and I agree with you. Let the people know.
Yeah.
They already know.
Oh, we're the flagship. We ought to be, right?
That was great. Yeah. Man, between DMase's Europe stories and your bringing the heat, this is a heck of a show today so far.
Well, what did you expect, Max?
I forgot the questions.
Well, okay, so you asked about the line combinations, and I do think that is the usage of these new guys. I do think it's going to take a little time to sort it all out. And I heard Andrew Burnett tell Jared that there's going to have to be a little unselfishness with new players, and winning players usually can do that. But I am curious about all of that as they try to piece it together at the starting training camp.
Yeah, well, Barry Trotz, he said, it was kind of an offhand sentence, but in his initial statement, he said, kind of as a hypothetical, our top line was so great last year. You think about Stamkos and Marchessault together with Evangelista, and he said that. So I figured we got to ask to make sure that wasn't something that he really was thinking through already, because as he said, he gave the answer I would expect him to give, the correct answer, which is he's not in charge of the lines, and also what we think the lines are now probably sets the tone for a sheet of paper in September, and from there, like you said, it can change a ton. But a year ago, right now, Barry Trotz was saying he envisioned Gus Nyquist playing on the second line on Cody Glass's left wing. Obviously, that did not happen. But I just thought it was good to get that clarified, and just it kind of frames my mind in terms of what to expect in training camp. But if I were them, it would be hard for me to resist Stamkos with Marchessault and Forsberg, right?
Oh, man. Well, if you wanted to really load up on that, it did sound to me like they want to, at least to start, keep the Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, the known quantity together. I think the first thing you got to figure out is, can Stamkos and Marchessault be a good fit? And then if they are, do you play Stamkos at center or wing? And who is the other guy on that line? I definitely think you heard Andrew Burnett sort of brainstorming. Tommy Novak is a very good creator and passer who is a good enough shooter to draw coverage away. But Marchessault and Stamkos are both volume shooters. So is that a fit? Max, I think that's going to be a philosophical question and probably a question that they have to sort of see if it works, and it's going to take some time.
Yeah, and they've got options, which is great. They've got some really capable options, and I would say don't forget about Juuso Parssinen and Cody Glass here as centers.
Yeah, it's going to be, they're going to have to figure this out. But this is a good problem to have, Max. I said this yesterday. It's better to have a problem like this than to try to not have it. To figure it out from there. Another thing I do want to ask you about, and Coach Andrew spoke on it yesterday a little bit with Jared Askarov and his sort of attitude coming into this training camp. Now, once you sign UC to a long-term deal, and I think, if I was a Saroff, you probably had to see that coming. But then you go and sign a backup goalie right after you sign UC to a long-term deal. That is what I think he didn't expect. But how do you think they approach this with him? Because to me, he still has to go in. Yes, he can be angry. He can be upset or disappointed, but he has to be able to, take that anger and frustration and use it in the right way, because they're going to give him an opportunity to compete in camp. And if he comes in with the attitude of, you know what, I'm pissed off, I'm mad and angry, he's not going to be able to be the player that he wants to be.
Yeah, it's been interesting hearing the thoughts from the decision makers, because Barry Trotz was asked about it, and like you said, Bruno was asked about it by Jared yesterday. I don't have a firm answer for you that isn't anything you already said, and I thought you laid it out really well there. And obviously, you have great perspective. Like you probably backed people up when you were a freshman or sophomore in high school, or a freshman at Michigan State, that you might have thought you were better than, and it takes time, and things like that happen. But yeah, it'll be really interesting. And I think a lot of it is them wanting to test him and put him through adversity too. I mean, clearly the number one decision-making factor is they think that he's not ready to be a full-time NHL goalie yet. And the Preds have all the information to make that decision. And they brought in Mitch Korn to a new supervisory goaltending coach role, the original goalie coach of the team. I'm sure he was part of this as well, even though he's newer to rejoining the organization. So it was definitely a big group decision. And this was a funny quote that Kevin Lankinen actually said on one of our shows last year, but it resonates with me. Like, the goalies are lucky. Their coach to player ratio is 2-to-1. And these guys are getting coached up constantly. Like, it's just going to be interesting to see how they approach him, whether or not they want to give him some NHL time, even if there's not an injury. But Wedgwood is just as good of a backup as Lankinen, and they gave him a 2-year deal. So it's I don't know. It's Willy and I disagreed on this on the air during the draft on Friday, but Barry Trotz gave some good thoughts that I think are closer to Willy's side yesterday that I do agree with, which is we don't have to do anything now, but it'll be interesting to see, because Askarov is an asset, and at some point they're going to have to make a decision and find a way to get something for somebody.
Now,
it's interesting that people, they don't listen to me and Barry Trotz. They want to listen to other people saying, you got to trade him now. You got to trade him. That strike by the outside.
They will listen to you, Willy, okay? They will listen to you, damn it. Now, on the UC front, because I haven't spoken with you, Max, since UC, and I know the deal was probably in works last week, and then officially it became official yesterday. But are you surprised with the number? I mean, the AAV per year? Do you think it was going to be higher? Do you think he took a hometown discount?
I think he probably took a little discount, but we've seen that in a lot of the contracts the Preds have given out recently, and I think the state income tax thing is really starting to mean something in the NHL, and it is helping the Preds, which is really, really good. Yeah, and they talked about this for probably solid 5-10 minutes on one of the Canadian trade deadline shows yesterday, and it was about whether or not they're going to build the no state tax teams, whether they're going to build that into the salary cap in the future, because apparently some of the Canadian teams are demanding that to happen, and it doesn't seem likely, because what happens if you take a discount? And then the example they gave was Mikhail Sergachev, who last week got traded from Tampa, a no tax team, to Utah. So they can't do that. I don't think, but I think it shows in the numbers the Preds have gotten these guys to agree for. And I think Carrier is another example of it. I think Tommy Novak's contract he signed late in the season is a good example of it. These guys want to stay. They want to play here. The no income tax plays a part in it, but they're very happy. And now the way this team is looking right now, who wouldn't want to stay? So I think Saros deserves it. And the big thing to remember too, I don't know if this gets talked about enough, but he would not have been able to get that 8th year, which in reality, because he has one more year left on his original contract, is a 9th year. He would not have been able to get that last year anywhere else. You could only sign contracts longer than 7 years with your original team per the CBA. So there were a lot of reasons for him to stay. Both sides wanted it. I don't think it was a perfect journey to it by any means, but they got there.
Max Hurst is with us, Predators Radio, 102.5 The Game. He was at the press conference yesterday. Barry Trotz was asked about no trade protection for UC Saros, and Barry Trotz did say, as he said with Jared last week, that he deserved some. But yesterday, now that the deal is done, I think we were all hoping for a few more specifics, but he didn't really give them completely. But he sort of said, and I tried to go back and listen to it. It's still hard to tell if he means the protection is on the first part of the agreement or the second half. I guess we'll wait and see if and when those details come out. But he did verify that there is some no trade protection for UC Saros.
Yeah, and there really had to be, which I think you guys have all said, and Trotz basically echoed that. But I don't know, Willie, tell me if I'm wrong, but is it not decently safe to assume that he is a full no trade for the first maybe 3-4 years and then a list for the second half?
You know, if that's how, that's maybe how I would try to put it together. That's how a lot of players put it together. They want the full no trade for a while, but then you reach a point in your career, and you know, we were doing this table last week. When UC Saros is, I think, 32, Yaroslav Askarov gets into that age category where, you know, he's going to be in his mid-20s, I think 25. I think when Saros is 22, and this is 2027, Askarov will be 25. So if Askarov, if they play the long game and Askarov graduates up into that backup role and they're sharing the job with Saros as the leader, Askarov as the understudy, that's probably the crossroads. That's probably the last crossroads. That, to me, is when it's important to know what the no-trade ramifications are. I'm sure they were thinking about that when they were putting this together. But Saros probably wants as much as he can get, and then maybe it's modified. There's a lot of different levels it could be.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to remember, with the 3 contracts they signed yesterday, and including Yossi and Forsberg, they now have 5 skaters under contract into their late 30s. So Saros' contract, by comparison, and also as a goalie, I mean, I don't think you have problems keeping him the whole time if that's what ends up happening.
Right, and this would be, again, in the Barry Trotz, the term he likes to use is protect the franchise, protect the organization, right? Do what's best for the player, but at the same time, I want to protect the organization. So if Askarov, in my vision, and this has been my vision, a lot of people don't think it could happen, but Askarov as not a not high paid, you know, backup goalie for 2 or 3 years, if you have the notion that he is on the verge of superstardom, which a lot of people think he's got that ceiling, Saros, to me, if you can have some leeway at a certain point and he is able to be traded, and remember, you can trade somebody who has a no-trade clause. You just have to get them to waive the no-trade clause, and the player has a lot more say, which could affect what you get for him. But in my mind, $7.74 million is a cap hit for a goalie that's, say, age 32. We just saw the Predators very interested in players 33, 34. Jacob Markstrom at 34 just got traded. Saros could be a commodity even at 7.74. So I think they could trade Saros way down the road if they thought Askarov was the man. But we're a long way from determining that. But I'm just saying you've got options open.
Yeah, you got a lot of options, which is great. And we are now at 2 drafts in a row where the Preds have said we're looking for a top 5 pick in exchange for Yaroslav Askarov. How many drafts do you go until someone gives you one? You know, so that could happen.
Okay, Max, what about the age of the roster? I think that's what a lot of people are concerned about, that it is a 30-something. But when you remember this, DMase, I think it was ABC. When we were growing up, there was a show. I never watched it. It was called 30-something.
30-something, yes.
30-something.
Came on Saturdays, yeah, I believe.
Something
yes.
like that. I don't know. But they are kind of the 30-something roster. I think Adam Vingan did the math that they are 31st or 30th in average age, at least as they sit here now. There is a chance that they could move some pieces around between now and the start of the season. But what kind of vibe did you get on Barry Trotz? Because he knows that that's going to be a question.
Yeah, he was asked it, I believe, by John Glennon toward the end of the press conference, and Trotz said, basically, I'm not worried about it because these guys, one, have the intangible drive to win, and two, have actually Bruno said this on Jared's interview, was the hockey sense and the hockey IQ is what keeps these guys able to play a system like the one that Brunette has here in Nashville now that's physically demanding. So I think those two answers kind of combine for what the Preds vision here. At the end of these contracts, you don't know where you're going to be at, but that's not for 4 years down the road. And as of now, the Preds have a team that can compete. It will be an older team, but that's the way it's been designed. And I mean, the Panthers in a lot of ways were that way too. They added a lot via trade, a lot via free agency, not a ton of homegrown. And that's how Barry Trotz saw the quickest path to being a top 4 conference final contender type team. And I think this was the only way the Preds were going to get there for the next few years. After the guys who they really wanted to make big leaps last year didn't happen, and almost all of them ended up with smaller roles or in the minors than they'd envisioned, with Tomasino, Parsonen, and Glass not seizing the moment like they'd hoped. So this is the direction they've chosen to go in, and it's a completely different direction. But I don't think it jeopardizes the future because that wave of the first-round picks that were in Milwaukee last year, none of those guys are going anywhere. So it just kind of slows down the timeline for them. And at some point, if someone like Joachim Kimmel is top 6 or top 9 worthy, there will be a spot for him, and it will be alongside whichever of these guys are playing their best.
Yeah, a lot of layers to this that will be addressed in the next 2 or 3 years. But I think for the next 2 seasons, you kind of know you're going to ride and hope that these 30-somethings still have enough in the tank to make deep runs with supporting roles from the group that you just identified, Max, that they still have. And they have flexibility with these guys. They can come up for parts of seasons and then go back down for Milwaukee, most of them anyway. They do have to make a decision on Parson and Glass and Tomasino in particular because those guys are waiver eligible. And so you can't just shuttle them back and forth to the Admirals like you could in past years. So they will have to cross those bridges. And then, of course, what to do with the Skarhoff will be a looming question for a while as well. Enjoy your drive, Max. Be safe, and we'll talk to you when you get back to the Ville.
Yeah, thank you, guys. My pleasure. See you soon.
All right, Max Hurst on the road, but he was at the press conferences yesterday. So a lot of questions going forward. DMase and I will tackle a couple of them, and then we'll set the stage for Elliot Friedman, who's going to join us at noon today. You're going to want to hear that because he's been drinking from the fire hose, but maybe now it's calmed down enough to where he's got his senses about it. I saw him on every show possible yesterday, and of course, breaking news, he's always tweeting things out and reporting on things that are happening. It's slowed down some. There's still some other pieces that will be moved in the next couple of days, but largely the first wave of free agency is in the book. Are the Predators a contender? We'll definitely ask that question. You're listening to Willy and DMase, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We're coming back to wrap up hour number 1 next.
Andrew Burnett's with his Predators head coach. Your system is very high octane, very taxing. And I do wonder, is there a thought about how you're going to kind of work in and fit in a 34-year-old Steven Stamkos or a 33-year-old Jonathan Marchessault, given the fact that as much as we'd love for these guys to still be 27 years old physically, they're probably not.
Yeah, I mean, what separates them, and I always separated them, and separated Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist is their hockey sense. And I think the way that we like to play, for sure, there's a lot of skating, there's a lot of work, but there's also a lot of anticipation. There's a lot of thinking. There's a lot of being a step ahead. And they're both, one, they still can skate, and two, they're extremely intelligent players that anticipate extremely well. So it might take a little time. Obviously, we do things a little bit different. You could see from our body of work last year, took a lot of our guys, 15, 20 games, 30 games to get accustomed to. Very similar to, when I was in Florida and we had Sam Reinhart come in from Buffalo. It took him, 20 games to get going, but he figured it out real fast, and he had tremendous seasons for me. So I think we're really looking forward. It might take some time. It's always trial and error. But they've been leaders. They've won Stanley Cups. They've been a part of amazing runs. And I think they're just excited to come and fit in and play hockey here in Nashville.
That's Andrew Burnett yesterday with Jared Stillman on Stillman and Company. That was in the aftermath of the Barry Trotz press conference that we're breaking down today on the show, now that we've had time to just breathe a little bit after yesterday's frenzy. Willy and DMase here with you, brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and up and in Tennessee to bet. Elliot Friedman joins us at noon. You're definitely going to want to hear that. I thought it was interesting, DMase, because Andrew Burnett, I thought, articulated the key with guys. And you're a guy that played for a long time in the NFL at a high level. Keeping your body in shape is one thing, but also just sort of knowing how to play. The words that jumped out to me with Andrew Burnett when he's thinking about Stamkos and Marchessault and a lineup with a lot of 30-somethings is maybe you don't have that blazing speed, but if you have hockey sense, anticipation, things like that, you can play fast and play effectively, even if you're not a burner. So to me, that was the key buzzword out of that, was anticipation and hockey sense.
Yeah, you have to.
Because that's part of football too, right?
Yeah, as you start to get older, you start to, lose some of that, what got you there. You start to lose some of that speed, some of that quickness that you were able to use to your advantage early in your career. Then you have to start learning as you're, and I think this sometimes what the mistake young players make is that, I'm faster, quicker than everybody, so I don't have to work on those little nuances of my game, because they think, I'm gonna be fast, forever. That's what they think. And then 3, 4, 5 years down the line, they start to lose that speed, whether it be because of injury or they're just getting a little older. Typically, it'll take, after you reach that 30, then you start to see the decline a little bit in that speed. And some guys just don't know how to handle it. Why? Because they haven't worked on that all-around game. And what's most important is the mental part of the game, because the game of football, pretty much like hockey, is, I think, a lot mental. You have to think the game long-term. You have to think the game 2 or 3 plays ahead. You got to understand situations in games. And the better you can understand it, the quicker you are. And it may seem as if you are playing faster than everybody else. No, I'm not playing faster physically. I'm just playing faster mentally. So how can you get guys to accept that as they start to get older? And that's what Coach Bruno is going to have to figure out with some of these young, older guys. And, but you're bringing in older guys that have achieved a lot.
Yeah.
Guys that have played, that have been at the pinnacle of this sport. So you don't have to teach them or tell them you need to do this mentally. They know it already. They know it. Why? Because they've been through it, and their career sort of sort of states that if you look at their career as a totality. So I think it'll be easier for him to figure that out because they will figure it out, meaning the players. The hard part is going to be, how do we get these guys to mesh together?
Right.
That's
in a new system
exactly.
that is a little different.
Absolutely.
It's like changing offensive coordinators, right?
Mhm.
There is a little different way that Andrew Burnett's pretty unique how they play. But as you heard Bruno say, anticipation, hockey sense are important. And he thinks, wise players who have won can adapt. But he did admit it will take some time. The other facet to this that's important or to remember, and we can't play the entire interview again.
Yeah.
I would encourage you, if you're a Predator fan, listen to the whole interview that Andrew Burnett did with Jared. It is really, really good from start to finish. But the learning component that young players, and Luke Evangelista would be the student that was able to advance in the class quickest from learning from Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist and guys who have that trait that Andrew Burnett was talking about. But now you bring in more guys. That other group of young players that Barry Trotz said will probably get a taste of it. They're going to get in there some this year. That it's a great opportunity. Andrew Burnett said, you learn the game faster. You learn to play smart when you learn from great players like that. So that's the opportunity these young guys have coming in.
It reminds me, and listen, I'm not a huge Celtic fan because I'm a Laker fan. So when you're a Laker
we have to talk about the Lakers a little later.
Yeah, you can't be. It's like being a Celtic fan. It's an oxymoron. You can't do that.
You can't be both.
You can't be both. But you got to respect what Boston did in this year particular, because they had some young guys, and then they mixed it in with some older guys, but guys that are playing at a high level. And it took them a minute to sort of mesh, but when they figured it out, they end up being the best team in the NBA. Last year, they made it to the finals. They lost. This year, they made it to the finals and won. Why? Because these guys learned how to play together. Everybody knew their role, and they perfected their role. They didn't try to do anybody else's job. And I see that potentially happening here. Once they figure out how to play together, everyone will know their defined role within this team. Whether you're on the first line, second line, third line, or the fourth, you're going to know your role. And the faster you understand and know your role, the better we will be as a team. We got scores now. Now we got people that can put the puck in the net. Now we need to figure out, how do we distribute to those guys? What role are you going to be in each and every game? And when you are in that role, you got to accept it. That's the only way you're going to win. You got to accept the role that you're in and make and excel at that. So that's what I'm going to be looking for from the Nashville Predators, how they implement these guys, and then how do they accept their roles? Because these questions are going to be asked throughout the season, especially early on, the roles of each individual person, and they got to be able to accept whatever role they're in. But in accepting that, they got to enhance it and get better.
Yes, and in that portion of the season, remember last year they started 5-10. But there were no big expectations. There wasn't a panic because it was like, okay, this is new. Barry Trotz is bringing in a new coach. Not expected to have to win. Let's find out what the young guys have. If they start 5-10 this year, there'll be a different vibe going on. So they need to be able to win some while they figure it out. But hopefully the enhanced levels and layers that they have to the roster, plus they already have the nucleus together. It's not like they're coming in with a full new team. Most of the players will have played last year under Andrew Burnett. So hopefully that will enable them to be able to win at least reasonably well while they get these guys acclimated. So that'll be something to watch for. When we come back, Elliot Friedman is going to join us, and we'll get his assessment in the big picture of what the Predators did yesterday, what the league is talking about. We'll also ask him about the Saros Askarov stuff. Yaroslav Askarov, Elliot Friedman, I was watching live when he came on NHL Network and said, the Predators are shopping Yaroslav Askarov around. They're listening. They're getting a lot of calls. Barry Trotz had what he had to say about it yesterday. We'll cross-check that with what Elliot is hearing. Stay tuned. Hour number 2 is coming up here on Willy and DMase, 102.5 The Game. All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. As I've been saying, there's a great way to enhance your financial picture, especially if you're getting eaten up with high interest loans. And it's the Express Equity line of credit. I want to take it one step further and focus on veterans that are out there. If you're out there and you're a veteran, you have even more benefits from this program. You can access, if you're a veteran, up to 100% of your home's equity right now with Loan Pronto's VA Equity Advantage program. So check this out, because it's the same principles we talk about that everybody has access to for Loan Pronto. But if you're a veteran, you have those extra benefits. Get that 100 grand or 50 grand, whatever the amount you need to pay off credit cards, high interest loans, or start that home improvement project and make your home more valuable. So veterans love working with Loan Pronto. It's easy, no junk fees, no hassles. You can unlock the cash in your home's equity in a matter of weeks. So learn more about it by calling Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go online at loanpronto.com. Loan Pronto makes it easy for veterans. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval, NMLS consumeraccess.org. Hour number 2, Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. And we're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home with a $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willy Donick and Derek Mason back in the saddle with you today. We've had a couple of different guests when Elliot's joined us the last couple of weeks. And let me just give a shout out to Elliot here, because I believe this is his last appearance with us for the season. Hopefully we'll pick it back up when the season cranks up next fall. But we certainly have enjoyed his insights, and for him to make the time with us, especially during these nutty days, it's a big, big advantage to our station to be able to bring you that. So, Elliot, a big salute to you for another great season of great work for us.
Well, I appreciate it, and I will be back next year if you want me. I enjoy coming on every week. And, Derek, just so you know, none of those replacement guests can carry your jock. You're still the king. Okay?
Yes.
That was
appreciate,
and that includes Hal Gill. So that would be a big jock.
For sure, he can't do it. For sure, no.
Oh man.
So Elliot, let's start with this. Everywhere I was looking yesterday, whether it be clips from TSN or Sportsnet up your way, or NHL Network, which I saw you on yesterday, or up and down Twitter, the Predators basically were the lead story yesterday.
Yep.
And that is pretty significant, I think, historically for this market.
It's very significant. I knowing I was coming on today, I made sure to chat with Barry Trotz this morning, and I was just reminiscing with him about when he first got to Nashville and what that was like, and the historic day that yesterday was. And one of the things he talked about was when free agency would open, and it would take 5 or 6 days for Nashville to get a player, because you were trying to build a reputation, and nobody really knew who you were, and it wasn't and it wasn't a destination or anything like that. And now free agency opens, and you land 3 of the biggest stars, including 2 of the biggest names that were available on free agency. I think it just shows you, how far you guys have come in 25 years. And, the other thing too about Nashville is, I'm not sure how many of your fans are aware of this, but there's a lot of retired players moving to the area. The players like living there after their careers are done. Nashville has become a destination. And I know I've been saying that for a while, but if you didn't believe me, nobody's going to disbelieve that after yesterday. That was a major coup, and you guys were the number one story, no question.
It is interesting to reminisce, and DMase was texting this morning, looking back through history. And I remember the first time we had you on was when the Predators signed Paul Kariya. And then another time we had you on, we're like, we got to try to get Elliot Friedman on. This is before you became, long before, a regular guest on our station. This was at a different station. But the other part was when Barry mentioned this yesterday at the press conference, when Philadelphia signed the big offer sheet to Shea Weber for that enormous contract. And the Predators were at a crossroads. They had lost Ryan Suter to free agency, and they had to sort of show that they wanted to compete and play, and they matched it, even though it was not a comfortable contract to do. But these are the only other times, really, that they've been in the center. Of course, with the Shea Weber PK Subban trade would be another example, but rarely are they the talk of the league in the summer like that.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly was a big one last year. I would say that. Like, O'Reilly carries a big reputation around the league. So, but this is a much different stratosphere, and also because too, like Stamkos and Marchessault were such big franchise cornerstones. Stamkos is one of the greatest players in Lightning history. He was their captain. Marchessault was one of the original Misfits, the king of the Misfits, maybe in Vegas. He was the Conn Smythe winner, of course, in the playoffs last year. Like, these guys were identified with their teams, and now they're in Nashville. Now, I asked Trotz about this today. He didn't know about either one of these cases, but I think you had taken runs at Stamkos and Marchessault before. There was a time when Stamkos won his first Stanley Cup, and the rumor was that at the time Tampa was going to ask him, and I have to go back through my notes. I can't remember if they did ask him or it was just a conversation kind of out there that maybe they were going to ask him to waive his no move clause for cap reasons. And it was believed then that Nashville was a team, and David Poile was still the GM, that was going to was really interested at the time. There was a time a few years ago where there were rumors that Vegas might move Marchessault and Nashville was interested. Barry didn't know about those cases, but I have them kind of in my notes. So I think you guys have had interest in these guys before, but the difference is now they have interest in you. And that's a huge change for the Predators. Like yesterday was a big win yesterday. It was very seismic when the news broke that you guys got all three. And, you know, just a couple other things from the conversation about Barry. I don't know what he mentioned yesterday, but when they traded McDonough, you know, he said that he promised the leadership group that he would fill that hole, because I guess the players were really concerned, and, you know, because they had such respect for McDonough, and he did that with Shea. So I think that was a promise to the veteran leadership. And, you know, also too, you know, he you know, they have like a group chat, I guess, with some of their leadership players. And so I asked them, like, what did they say when you told them? And he said they were ecstatic. And Ryan O'Reilly sent a tweet that said, my jaw just hit the floor. So you know that is going to be big, not only for the fans, but for the room. The players will be excited. And you know, I know there's a lot of talk today about age and how old the Predators roster is. Yeah, I just think, and Derek, you can probably speak to this about as well as anybody can. I just think athletes now, you have so much access to sports science and things like that, that yes, you know, aging is a thing, but if you take care of yourself and you know what to do, you can put that off longer. Like Father Time is undefeated. Eventually he catches up to all of us, but you can put that off. And, you know, the thing I'll say about, like, not only guys like Ryan O'Reilly, but Stamkos is a guy who takes real care of himself. He's had traumatic injuries before, and he's had a fantastic career. He's super competitive. Marchessault was kind of a late bloomer. He's super competitive. You know, that's one of the things that Trotz talked about this morning is they're competitive guys. And, you know, I think that's going to be important. I think these guys are the kinds of guys who can put off the aging curve and still be effective. Like, obviously, Stamkos is 34. Marchessault, I think, is 33. Like, these guys are guys who can still be effective at that age.
We talk with Elliot Friedman, 32 Thought Podcast. Now, are you also taking a break from the podcast for a bit too, Elliot?
Yeah, we may do one more, Derek, but I have to reintroduce myself to my family and kick my wife's boyfriend out of the
house. Get out.
I always use that line, and she hates it, which is why I use it all the time.
Hey, you know what picks at her, so you say it anyway.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's why we have such a happy relationship.
Oh man, looking at this what the Nashville Predators were able to do, you know, in this past off season, obviously yesterday with signing the three big names. Where does this put them in regards to Dallas, Winnipeg, Vancouver? Because typically you don't see this with the team that had 99 points last year, close to 100 points, made the playoffs, but still able in the offseason to have enough money to add to a team that was a playoff team. So where does this put them right now as they sit in regards to those teams that I spoke of?
Well, first of all, Derek, I think the other thing too is that one of the things that Trotz said he was proud of was that they were able to do it despite having some dead money on their roster. Like, if you look at it, they've retained money, obviously, because of the Duchesne buyout, some of the trades they've made. You know, it's a really good point. Like, a lot of teams that would be in that kind of a situation would never be able to do something like that. So he was kind of proud of it. Look, I think, you know, there's no guarantees, and the West is brutal. Like, there are a lot of good teams, not only in your division, but the other one. But I think at the very least, like, you guys have put yourselves in the conversation. You know, like, Stamkos is a winner. He is a winner, and he competes hard. And, you know, he will make your power play extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous. And, you know, they got wiped out in the first round of the playoffs this year. but he was their best player. Like he was really good. Marchessault, like another like fierce competitor, a guy who's always been motivated by the fact his NHL career really didn't start till he was about 26 years old. Clutch scorer. Like the game I remember with Marchessault was last year when they won the Stanley Cup. In the second round, they were playing Edmonton. Game 6 was in Edmonton. They were up 3-2 in the series. I think it was 2-1 in the second period. And he scored a hat trick to knock out the Oilers. He just took over the game. Like another fiercely competitive guy. Shea, I don't know as well, but I'll say this. He played for one of the best coaches in the league, a coach who demands high levels of preparation, effort, and intensity, a guy who demands his players play one of the toughest defensive systems in the league. This is a guy who is trained to play, and he thrived under that. He was very, very comfortable under that. So you're getting 3 very competitive guys, 3 very talented guys, and there's no guarantees in that conference. There's a lot of great teams, but at least now you can look. Like you remember a couple of years ago when you made the playoffs against Colorado, I mean, Saros got hurt, but that was not a series. This year, you guys battled Vancouver wire to wire, but you couldn't score enough against them. That's not going to be a problem for you guys anymore. You guys are going to be able to score. And not only that, but those guys are competitive guys. You're going to look all these good teams right in the eye.
Now you look at you look at their roster and their lines. Obviously, you look at the first line with Forsberg and O'Reilly and those guys, and you think, hey, listen, that line is not broke, so let's not fix it. It seems like they've gotten to a rhythm. They play very well together, so let's keep that line together. Now you look at the second line, where there's Stamkos, Marchessault, and Novak at center. How much could that help a guy like Novak? We've seen him, show signs of brilliance last season, but then once we got in the playoffs, he disappeared. I don't think he was physically ready for the demands of the playoffs. But if you flank him with 2 guys that have been there, that have done it, how much better can he be?
I think a lot. And I think the other thing too, Derek, is that Stamkos can play center too. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have some flexibility there. I think, a guy who's as creative as Andrew Brunette is, he's going to be moving guys around. He's going to be, like, I can see sometimes for sure Novak centers some of these guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's times that Novak gets Stamkos centers and other guys get moved around. Like when I was talking to Barry this morning, he mentioned Luke Evangelista, that maybe he might get a chance to play with some of these guys. So I think that is important to them, that some of the younger players not only see what these guys are like in practice and off the ice, but get a chance to play with them. So I would expect Brunette to tinker. And I one thing we've learned in this game is that what your lineup looks like in October doesn't always look like that in April. So I think he's going to tinker a bit and try to find the right combinations.
Elliot Friedman is with us. And Elliot, it was interesting. Right after we talked to you late last week, it was later that night that the UC Saros deal went down. Yeah. And so ever since then, there's been a lot of discussion, not only with Saros, but also what now you do with Yaroslav Askarov. So let's start with Askarov, because you gave a report during the draft. I was watching the other day about, Askarov's name is out there and Barry Trotz is listening, but he wants something specific there. Where do you think that is today, especially now that they don't have a lot of cap space to add a player to the current roster? And he gave a lot of details yesterday of what he could do with Askarov, keeping him in the fold.
Yeah, you know what? Like I think this. I think one thing about Trotz is, he's not gonna do something just for the sake of it. I think he knows he's got a prospect here who wants to play in the NHL. I think it's been made very clear to Trotz that he does not want to go back to the American Hockey League. He wants to be in the NHL next year. And I think Trotz's reaction to that is, I understand the way you feel, but I'm going to do what's best for you, what I think is best for you and for us. Now, one of the things I kind of heard at the draft next year is that at the draft this past weekend is I do think there's a feeling in Nashville that Askarov might be better served with another year in the American Hockey League instead of playing like just 25 games or whatever in the NHL. I do think there is a segment of the Nashville organization that believes that. I'm not so sure the player's crazy about that. As a matter of fact, I believe he isn't. So number one, Trotz has to weigh, okay, what does that mean? If the player's unhappy, what exactly am I going to be dealing with here? And, does that matter to me? Like some managers are just like, you know what? Those are our rights. We can do that. You just have to deal with it. And some managers are like, I don't want this problem, so I'm going to end it before it starts. I don't know how he'll handle it, but I know this. He's got time. And if one thing that Trotz is he's patient. So he's got time to sort this out. As you saw my report, as you said, Willie, you know that they're looking for either an NHL player who they feel is worth trading for Askarov or a prospect that's worth trading for him at another position. I think there's a lot of interest in him. I think people recognize how talented he is. I just think that, he's going to set a high price. But the one thing is that, we could hang up the phone and he could do it right away. But the bottom line is he's got time right now, and he's not going to rush into anything.
Okay, let's take the Saros part, because Barry Trotz did say yesterday that UC Saros was a player that has earned some no-trade protection. He didn't get into a lot of specifics, but I think a lot of people are wondering, especially if they decide to hang on to Askarov and it becomes apparent that Askarov may be in his mid-20s, kind of like Vasilevsky and Ben Bishop. Maybe Askarov is the long-term play. Could you trade UC Saros? Is he still tradable way down the road there? So what do we think about specifics? I don't know if that's out there or anything. If you've heard anything along those lines, but what would you speculate?
I haven't heard any specifics, but I can tell you what I think is going on here. And I will confess, I could be proven to be wrong because I don't know 100%.
You wrong? Come on. You're not wrong.
It happens. This is what I think it is. First of all, the Predators and Saros's people were negotiating. They're battling away. It happens. It's all normal. And I heard what happened was Saros eventually just told his guys, I want to stay. Get this done. And I think that's what happens sometimes. I'll tell you a great story. When Matthias Ekholm signed his first contract, or the first big contract in Nashville, which was 6 times 3.75, I happened to be speaking to one of his representatives at the time, and he was like, he said, like, I wasn't crazy about that contract, but Matthias said, get it done. And when you're the representative, that's your job. Even if you disagree, if the client says get it done, you get it done. And so Saros, I don't necessarily think his agents disagreed, but I heard that he just told them, guys, like, I want to be here, get it done. So, the number is lower than he probably could have gotten, but still, like, it's not like he isn't going to be making a ton of money. But I think when it comes to that, one of the trade-offs you make is, and I know this happens in Nashville, Nashville says, hey, we're a no-tax state, and that can benefit you. And so what a good agent will do is say, okay, maybe that's true, but if you could always trade us to a higher tax state, so you have to protect me. And usually in those situations, it's for the first 4, 5, maybe 6 years of the deal that there's usually some pretty strict protection there. Sometimes it's a full no move clause. Sometimes it's a no move clause and a partial no trade. Like maybe you give a couple of teams that you can be traded to, but it's usually for at least the first half of the deal. What teams usually do, and in most cases this does happen, there are some where it doesn't. What teams usually do is they will say, look, you have to give me an out on the back end. If things go south on the back end, or we need to move you for cap reasons or something like that, you have to give me an off ramp. And in most cases that does happen. There are some where it doesn't. So I would bet when all is said and done and this contract is filed, we'll see that he has some pretty strict no trade protection for at least the first half of the contract. And then we'll see where it goes.
Elliot, last thing for you. Right now they're still under the cap, and there are some teams, and we could have a whole show on what Washington's doing. They're way over the cap right now. You can be in the summer.
In the summer, yes.
Right. But you have to figure some things out. Nashville is tight to the cap, but and so they could find ways to keep most of these guys in the fold, but you'd probably like to have some flexibility. I'm curious about a crowded group now at forward and on defense, guys like a Cody Glass or a Dante Fabro, as teams sort of let the dust settle and they're looking for other pieces to the roster. What do we think the trade market could be for guys like that who don't cost a lot and could be open to a new opportunity?
Yeah, I think everybody usually takes a bit of a deep breath right after free agency. There's still some secondary guys over the next couple of days, but then there will be some teams for sure that will be looking at things for those reasons you mentioned. I mean, the other thing I think you have to remember, Willie, is you don't have to be cap compliant until you set the rosters the day before the regular season. So you have time.
Yeah.
But
so you could set up a huge competition in camp if you want to, and be right on the edge.
Teams do squeeze you. The more you wait, the more teams do squeeze you. I think that one of the other things that happens here is if you have an arbitration case, and we're going to see that set over the next little while, if you have an arbitration case, then you get a second buyout window. So that can happen too. I don't know that Nashville in particular would want to do that, but teams will have that opportunity.
Elliot, great stuff as always. I hope you get some rest and relaxation. I hope the family can keep you busy and you get the guy out of there.
Get him out.
Yeah, get him out of there.
I'm parked in the driveway. There's some boxes there. I'm kind of wondering what's going on.
Help him get him out.
Some luggage.
Exactly.
Oh, boy.
I'm not carrying them if anyone does. Himself.
Elliot, great stuff. We'll talk to you down the road. Take care.
All right, guys. Have a great summer. Right? Thanks for everything.
All right. Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts, the podcast. He sort of intimated there might be one last one there that would be worth listening to once they get that executed. And then we certainly wish him peace.
Yes.
Let him rest, recharge.
I'm sure he's going to need the rest.
He works hard. All the mileage. Now, while you were in Europe, you were racking up some miles yourself, DMase.
Yes.
He was going back and forth from Edmonton to Sunrise, Florida, back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
The series went all the way to 7 games. Then he went to Toronto, back home, for the NHL Board of Governors meetings. Then out to Vegas for the draft. And now I'm presuming he's back home doing his thing. That's a lot of miles.
Yeah, he and I need to become close friends because I know he has a bunch of free miles to fly.
He said he got on the charter for the NHL Stanley Cup final. But he said he was trying to double dip. He wanted to see if those miles counted.
I would have did the same thing.
I like how he's thinking. I like how he's thinking.
Kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Right.
Exactly. Might as well.
All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will react to some of what he said there, particularly the Saros Askarov thing. I think a lot of people are still curious about how that's going to play itself out in the coming months. We'll hit on it when we come back here on 102.5 The Game.
I do think there's a feeling in Nashville that Askarov might be better served with another year in the American Hockey League instead of playing like just 25 games or whatever in the NHL. I do think there is a segment of the Nashville organization that believes that. I'm not so sure the player's crazy about that. As a matter of fact, I believe he isn't. So, number one, Trotz has to weigh, okay, what does that mean? If the player's unhappy, what exactly am I going to be dealing with here? And, does that matter to me? Like, some managers are just like, you know what? Those are our rights. We can do that. You just have to deal with it. And some managers are like, I don't want this problem, so I'm going to end it before it starts. I don't know how he'll handle it, but I know this. He's got time. And if one thing that Trotz is he's patient. So he's got time to sort this out.
So there you have it. Just laying out the pathway for Yaroslav Askarov. We know UC Saros is in the fold. Long-term commitment. A lot of interesting perspectives there. One from Elliot right there in our last segment. One from Andrew Brunette yesterday on Jared's show. And obviously Barry Trotz at the press conference had a couple of long, drawn-out, detailed answers on it at the press conference yesterday. So putting all that together, I think we have a little sense of where things are. And, Derek, I've said this from the start. By the way, this is Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. Coming up during the 1 o'clock hour, Teron Davenport and Tim Hasselbeck. So we'll get into a little summer football talk with those two. That should be fun. But DMase, I have always said when we were kicking this around as the offseason was unfolding, and now, this is before all this went down.
Mm-hmm.
I said at any time, and I will continue to say this, at any time you are blown away for an offer for either Saros or Askarov, you can strike. Whenever that iron gets hot, super hot, if it hits the temperature you like, okay, make the move. But there is no hurry. You don't have to do it. Now that Saros is signed, I think that phone is not going to ring for a while. Saros is going to be the guy for a while, especially after they made the moves they made yesterday. They are going for it in these next 2-3 years with an experienced goalie like Saros, plus the roster they have with Forsberg and Yossi in their prime, etc. So now what about Askarov? It's clear Elliott is hearing some squawking, and I think you can hear it in Andrew Brunette's voice and Barry Trotz's voice that Askarov, he's a competitor. He wants to play in the NHL, and they're trying to salve that as much as they can and say, be patient, hang with us. It's going to work out, but we understand your frustration. So where do you go from there? I think that's the question going forward. So what do you think as you hear all of those three perspectives that we heard? Because I think Elliott's probably relaying some stuff that he's heard from around the league about what to do.
I think, I've been in a situation and, I could have taken one or two approach to what was going on with me. And it's sort of similar to what Askarov is going through. Now, granted, I wasn't a first round pick. I wasn't, a guy that had, all these expectations on being this great player. Now, ultimately, I turned out to be one, but these expectations weren't know me. But I felt I played well enough, more than well enough, to have more of a larger role in what was going on offensively, but I didn't. And then they go out and they sign, they draft Kevin Dyson, but not even that. They go out and get Yancey. Then the next year they go out and get Carl Pickens. And it seems like I'm falling further and further down the depth chart. And it's not because of what I'm doing. It's just that they, in their mind, they feel that they got to have these guys above me. And I was upset. I was angry. I had a right to be, because I was doing all the things that they were asking me to do. And when I got a chance to play, I showed them I could play. But yet and still, it was like, get at the back of the line. And I know that's how Askarov feels. Like, I've been doing everything that y'all have asked me to do. I've been dominating at the lower level. I've come up and played at the NHL level. It's sort of like it was a mixed bag when I was up there, but I played good and I played bad. I played like a guy that just got his first real time in the NHL. But I showed promise. Then I go back down to Milwaukee and I'm still playing great hockey. What more do I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
You go out and sign UC Saros to an 8-year deal, didn't you? And that's not even, I don't think that's the kicker. The kicker is you go out and sign another goalie.
Right.
That's the sort
Scott
of
Wedgwood.
slap in the face. You're not mad at the goalie. You're upset or disappointed that they're not giving you, in your mind, they're not giving you an opportunity to prove you can play in the NHL. That's how I felt. But I chose to make the decision along, with advice from good friends. Listen, go in there and just play. Don't allow what they're doing around you. Don't allow that to affect what you're doing on the field, because if they see it affecting you, you've lost already and they've won. You go in there, you play your tail off, do what they ask you to do, control the things you can control, and let the rest take care of itself. Because ultimately, you're playing for 31 other teams, not just this team. You're playing for 31. This is just a 32nd team. It doesn't mean it's the last team. That's how Askarov has to go into camp. He has to go into camp, one, prepared and ready to go. He has to go into camp knowing that he has to earn a spot. Don't go into camp, woe is me, feeling bad about yourself, pissed off at everybody. That's not helping you, not one bit. That's going to get you closer to being out of the NHL than being in it, because people respect Barry Trotz and what he says. And if he comes back and say, this kid just lost it he just didn't handle it well, you know how far that will go toward other teams? They're hearing that from Barry Trotz. No, you come in with the attitude of, I'm going to show them, prove to them that you deserve to be on this roster. Prove to them that you deserve to be the backup. Because what they're doing is, to me, that's insurance policy, because they don't quite know about you yet, because you've shown the ups and you've shown the downs. We're kind of like, we don't know if he's ready. Well, prove to them that you're ready. Damn that they signed Wedgwood. He's not your opponent. Your opponent is yourself. Now, Wedgwood is not your opponent. You see, if Saros is not your opponent, they're your teammates. You're your own opponent right now. And if you allow yourself to beat yourself, you're going to be back in Milwaukee.
Yeah. And Barry Trotz did say that yesterday. He didn't use the term Wedgwood as an insurance policy, but he did basically say one of the options. He laid out all the options yesterday.
And that's the good thing about Barry. He's truthful in what he's saying.
Yes. And he said, I want to be transparent. I have been transparent with Askarov, just like he was transparent with UC Saros when he said, yeah, I'm fielding calls about you. And it may not be the easiest thing for you to take, but I want you to hear it from me and not just hear this noise around and me be Mr. Mystery. So he has been upfront with Askarov. And he has said, come in and blow the doors off in training camp, and then that will lead us in a direction. He's used other things that happened in the past with his experiences on how that can play out. And he kind of said, if that happens, I got to go talk to Wedgwood, right? And so he didn't use insurance policy, but you can sort of read between the lines and say, yeah, a little bit. Wedgwood is a little bit of an insurance policy, but I think he believes that the best thing for Askarov would be maybe some time in the NHL, but a bulk of the season again in the AHL, which is not what Askarov wants to hear. And it's interesting you brought up you've referenced this before, the advice you got from Chris Sanders and some others that told you exactly what you just shared with us. You can't control some of these things. You have to just worry about your play. That's exactly what Andrew Burnett told Jared yesterday. He said he's a former player. He gets the frustration of that. He's been in those shoes. Now, the difference is it's different for a goalie or a quarterback than it is for probably a wide receiver or a defenseman or a forward in hockey, because it's easier to work guys in because you need more of them. It's a little tougher because, as Barry said many times, you only are playing one goalie a night,
time, yeah.
right? You need two, but you're really only playing one the bulk of the games. So that is a tough thing. So the other part I got, and you tell me if you heard this from Elliott. Look, they're up against the cap. So getting a player in return for a Scaroff that's good, and you want somebody that's good, that's probably going to come with a price tag.
Yeah.
And then you got to clear some space out to do that. So that doesn't look to me very likely. And is it likely that somebody is going to swap top prospect for top prospect? I don't know. That's the one thing out there, but I'm wondering who that would be. There's certainly not a lot of rumors. There didn't seem to be any further noise generated or scoop or rumors generated from what was clearly being broadcast to the entire league. Hey, you could get a Scaroff. You trade us your top prospect at another position, we can talk. And that didn't seem to lead to anything. So right now, I don't know that they think that the phone's going to ring with a big trade anytime soon. So I think this is going to go into training camp.
Yeah, and I think it should. If I'm a team, I'm not offering up anything big right now because the Predators have to make a decision. You know, they are the ones that have to make this decision, not other teams. So I'm not going to sit here if I'm another GM and offer, top flight players or whatnot. Not at least until I see what truly happens here in Nashville.
Yeah.
Because if it works out that the young kid is not ready, then why am I giving up so much to get him? Because if he's not ready now, then he's not going to be ready for us. If we trade for him, if we trade, high-end prospects or we trade a high-end player, we automatically have to play him because of the players that we traded him for. So if he's not ready, I'm not making that move.
Yeah, I wonder if if you're trading for a Scaroff, if you do think you're on a much faster track.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're just going to inherit the same frustrated prospect as he is right now in Nashville. So that's something to think about. So I think how it's going to play out is what I've been saying. You can wait. You heard Elliott say it. You can wait. You don't have to trade him. You can be patient. And Barry Trotz is willing to be patient. And you have to have a system with Pekka Rinne, Mitch Korn, and the people that you have in your circle that can help him through this process and say, I know you're frustrated. Pekka can go to a Scaroff and say, I have been there. I got sent to Milwaukee for a third straight year, and I lived through it. And not only that, he said it on the air, again with Jared, it was the best thing that happened to me. I didn't think so at the time. I was like you. I was ticked off. I didn't think I deserved to be sent down to the AHL. I didn't want to go there, but I ended up being better because of it. I think if they can sell him that, it may take time. You heard Andrew Brunette say this yesterday. Right now is when you probably feel the emotions the most. That initial reaction. They just signed Saros, 8 years. They just signed Wedgwood. I mean, you're ready to start throwing stuff.
Oh,
probably.
Of course.
You know the feeling.
Of course.
And so Brunette says, okay, after that subsides a little bit over time, can we go back to work and then sell him on this long-term plan?
Yeah, it's going to have to be a good sale because you have to be honest with him. And I'm sure Coach Bruno and Barry have been honest with them, probably brutally honest with them. So you have to be honest with them. And then you have to be sort of empathetic about what he's going through. You got to empathize with them. And let him know, listen, when he's playing well, you got to let him know he's playing well. You got to let him know when he needs to get better. But you gotta make him understand, or try to make him understand, listen, this may be the best decision for your career. You're going to have a long career, but it starts right now.
Yeah.
And how do you accept this challenge? If you accept this challenge the way a competitor needs to, you're going to have a long career. If you don't, I'm not sure you will.
And also they can sell him on this. And that's the key, but also they have the leverage.
Exactly.
He can't go anywhere unless he wants to go play, like DMase said, in Europe somewhere. Even if it's not the KHL, if he wants to go play in Sweden, you can do that. But if you want to play in the NHL, this is what you have to go with. This is just part of it. And it's not ideal. It's not perfect, but if the Predators can sell him, this is a great pathway for you to be a great goaltender in this league somewhere. This will work. Trust us. I think that's where they're at right now. These next couple months will be important to try to build on that. When we come back, we'll wrap up this hour. Then we'll talk to TD at 1 o'clock. Teron Davenport and Tim Hasselbeck during the 1 o'clock hour. Stay tuned.
You can look back at, what happened in Pekka's career. I think he was a couple years in Milwaukee. And then I had signed, I think it was Dan Ellis. I think Mace might have been in the net with him. And our goaltending that year was supposed to be Mace and Pekka. Pekka didn't have a great camp. He just didn't get off to a good start. So we started with Dan Ellis, and then Dan Ellis took over for Mace. And Pex ended up playing a good portion of the year down in Milwaukee, which, Ashcroft could do. And if you talk to Pex, that was the best thing for him to just another year, but also come together as a goaltender. Mind, body, spirit, the technical game, all that. But I also have to protect our organization and for the long run. So Scott Wedgwood is there. And if Askarov and Wedgie, if we go to camp and Askarov blows our socks off and is ready, then we'll talk to Scott. If Scott beats out Askey, then then Askey goes down.
And they went on to say, and I'll start getting some calls. So that might be the case. So prepared for all different avenues. Barry Trotz has it covered. And once again, the theme, he's being very transparent with the media with how all of this could play out. I think it's important to listen to him because he's not giving you the runaround. He is presenting what a lot of GMs would not present. Some GMs would not go there.
Oh, absolutely.
So I like that about him. So he sort of echoed what we hit in the last segment. Derek did really give you a great perspective of somebody who's sat in the shoes of a Skaroff, because when DMase was a young wide receiver for the Tennessee Oilers at the time, he was sort of in those shoes at a different position, albeit, but at the same time, the frustration of being blocked by other veterans that were in the mix, and they weren't just kind of clearing everything out for him, saying, here's the job, go to it. So he used the example of Pekka Rinne, and Pekka has told this story firsthand. But that time was the summer that the rally was going on. In other words, Craig Leopold was selling the franchise of the Predators. He was in the midst of selling it. And, of course, there was a question of, is the team even going to stay in Nashville, right? It looked tenuous there. It looked like they might be moving to Canada because the original guy that made the deal with Leopold was going to move them to Hamilton, and then he fumbled it all over the place. Thankfully, Jim Balsillie, he screwed the whole thing up and allowed some time for the current ownership group to come together and purchase the team. And thank goodness they did, because we've got all this great history since then. But what was happening then for the team, David Poile was ordered by Craig Leopold to strip the team down. And it was a really good team. This was Paul Correa. This was a young Shea Weber. This was Peter Forsberg. This was a 110-point team that was stacked. And they had taken so much time to build it. And Craig Leopold said, break it down. I want you to go to the salary cap floor to make this easier for me to sell. And that was tough. But David Poile handled it as well as he could. Part of it that he had to do, he had to trade Thomas Vokoun, who was a great goalie at the time, an all-star goalie. But he knew he had a young Pekka Rinne in the system, and he knew he had a solid goalie in Chris Mason. And he had this other guy, Dan Ellis, who was kind of a no-name. Nobody had heard of Dan Ellis. So everybody was thinking, well, they'll bring up Rinne and they'll use Chris Mason, and that will be a pretty good tandem. They can make a go of it, even though you'd love to have Thomas Vokoun, who was in the prime of his career. They traded him to Florida. They got a first-round pick for him, which I think turned into Colin Wilson, as a matter of fact. So there was that. All that to say, they got to camp, and Dan Ellis beat out Pekka Rinne. And Barry Trotz said, look, I think he deserves the job. He won the job. Let's keep him. And everybody was kind of like, oh, come on, you're not going to do this, right? This is a guy we've been hearing a lot about. Rinne is the guy. Nope. Dan Ellis won the job. We're sticking with that. Rinne not only had to go down to start the season, he stayed down there the entire year, pretty much. But as you heard Barry Trotz say, it worked out, right? Pekka Rinne, mind, body, and spirit, said he, in retrospect, that might have been the best thing for him. And the following year he came in, Mace went on and signed a free agent contract elsewhere with St. Louis. And then it was Dan Ellis as sort of the placeholder for Pekka. Pekka ended up being in the Rookie of the Year final the following year in his first year. So that he was ready to succeed right as soon as he came up the following year. It only took him a few games, and the next thing you know, he was taking the starts from Dan Ellis, and he became the man for the next, 10 years, basically. So it worked out. So I think Barry Trotz is saying, if you work with me here, it will work out one way or the other.
But here is what could potentially be the problem. Because everything you're saying is absolutely right. And Pecorine can go to him and say, listen, kid, I know what you're going through. I've been through it. I understand it. You're first round. I was a sixth rounder.
Yeah, seventh rounder.
Seventh rounder.
In fact, eighth rounder. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
So I was an eighth.
They don't
rounder.
even have. They don't
even
have
have
eight
rounds anymore. Yeah. So I was a round they don't have anymore. But I fought through it, played well, and eventually, what I fought for, I end up getting. Here's the problem with that sometimes is that the young guy in their mind, they're thinking, you're not me. I'm not you. I was a first round pick. You were not.
Right.
I was this heralded, phenom of a goalie. You were.
Right.
Were not.
You were trying to beat out Dan Ellis.
Exactly.
I got to beat out UC Soros.
Exactly.
And
Absolutely. So that's the problem you could potentially run into because sometimes, when you're talking to younger athletes or younger people in general, in their mind, they think, but that was your time. That was when
Right.
you played, or that was back in the day. It's not like that anymore. I'm a better player, or I'm here in regards to the ladder of success. I deserve this. And you may just as well be right about all that. You may be right. But what you're not right about is you're not in that place that you want to be right now. So in order to get into that place you want to be, which is a starting goalie, listen, you have to play the game. And this is part of playing the game. Not that Barry Trotz is playing the game with him per se, but I'm saying this is how the game goes. Like, listen, just because you're ready doesn't mean you're ready. Just because I think I'm ready doesn't mean I'm ready. The people that understand this sport very well, that have been through situations like this, they know, and they want you to succeed. They want you to be the guy, but you're not ready yet, kid. You're not. You can be ready, but what you can do as a player, come in and be ready, come in and compete at a high level, and then allow your play to take over.
Yes.
That's all you can do.
And it may not lead to more time as a Predators goalie, but it could. The key for Askarov, and this is what I would sell to him, is keep upping your stock.
Exactly.
Get better. We don't think you're ready right now, but you can, and we see these areas that you can improve. If you do these things, you're going to put yourself on the fast track because it's going to work out one of two ways. Either you will force your way into the lineup for the Predators, or your stock is going to be at a point where the phone is going to, be blowing up, and the Predators will get a good deal to move him for something that they feel is fair in return. Right? You're going to get the return that you're looking for if you're Barry Trotz. That's the end game here. You don't want. You heard Elliott say some GMs just want to get rid of the problem. Just take anything you can get. No. I think they know he is such a valuable asset that if he's not going to do well for the Predators, you want to make sure you get really good return on that asset. And that may not happen right away, but you have time to do it. But you don't want him to pitch a fit, be complaining behind the scenes, be a problem, because that's going to lower his stock, and it's also going to hurt Askarov. That's what you have to sell. We want this to be a win-win.
Because, when Barry says something, people take that and run with it because he's had so much success in this league. So to me, listen, you come in, you do what is asked of you as a player. You may make it, to be the backup goalie, but if you don't, it's not the But if you come into camp still worried about what they've done as far as signing guys, you'll never be ready. From a mental standpoint, you won't be ready. Why? Because you're going to be continuing to complain about what they've done. They did this. They want to say, well, no, okay, I understand that. But what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it, kid?
So we'll see how the kid handles it. That's going to be the question. How does he handle it? When we come back, we will talk to Teron Davenport. He's back from vacation. Everyone was on vacation except me. We're coming back for the last hour of the show next. Willy and DMase continuing here on 102.5 The Game. We've had a great show so far. We're going to take a break from the insane talk about the Predators, and why not? I mean, this is an exciting time in the offseason. Predators took over the talk of the league with the free agent signings they've made. The expectations level is going to be huge come fall. But other things are going on, and it is time to talk to Teron Davenport. By the way, we are continuing our show brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and up and in Tennessee to bet. And, of course, our phone and text line, as always, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Teron Davenport has been on vacation, and so he and DMase and Nick have been sunning it up, having a blast while I've been slaving away here at the bike. Actually, we have had a lot of fun here. There's been plenty to go on and plenty to talk about. But Teron, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, no, it's great to be back, man. I being under that sun in Cabo, I may be the same complexion as DMase now. I don't know. We'll have to stand next to each other and see, man.
Hey, man, I got me a lot of sun over in Europe, so it was great.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm hoping you had a wonderful time there on the beach, man. We all need it, especially right now as we enter into the football season coming up pretty much in the next 3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks, teams report to camp. I recently saw Will Levis and, clips of him throwing the wide receivers. And I know Will spoke of this. This is something that he wanted to do prior to them being dismissed from the OTAs. But have you spoken with him or any of the guys that are at the or were at the, let's call it the throwing session? How did it go? Where is he at as far as, building that rapport with the other receivers?
Yeah, things went really well there. I actually have a conversation with D-Hop set up soon. But yeah, things went well there. It was a good bonding experience. They had dinner. They went on a fishing trip, and it was D-Hop, it was Tajay Spears, Calvin Ridley, Josh Wiley, Chig, and of course Levis. And it's funny, they were in Cabo, when I was there. So it was a good time, and it was a great experience for them, from what I understand and what I was told. So that's a good thing. And as you know, from having been there and done that relationship with the quarterback, when you're able to have that beyond just the football field, that's what allows you to be on the same page and think so much alike and be able to communicate without literally talking, communicate wise. It's that eye, looking at each other and knowing what's up.
Now, listen, I know you didn't mean to start anything, but the names that were not said, Traylon Burks, guys like that were not at this throwing session. Was it just a scheduling thing? Because, to me, Traylon is one of those guys. And not to say that he and Traylon hasn't thrown together since OTAs, but in a situation like that, you expect a guy like Traylon Burks, to be there to help build that rapport with the quarterbacks as well as the other receivers. So was it just a scheduling thing that
No, and that's a good point, and that's something, when I was told who was going to be there, I was surprised at Burks, and also Tyler Boyd.
Tyler Boyd as well.
I will say Burks, his wife is having a baby.
Okay.
Not that it's coming right now, but I mean she's coming. He has a daughter coming. But I don't know if that has something to do with it. That's beyond my knowledge. I don't know, but you would think that would be a good thing for him to attend. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say I would imagine he had a good reason not to be there.
Now, looking at this wide receiver position, one guy that sort of gets left out of the talks, and we know that, listen, it's the top three guys, Boyd, Ridley, and D-Hop. And then after that, you try to figure where's, Traylon going to fit in what they're trying to do as an offense. But the guy that sort of, been left out of this is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's been the guy that, listen, he hasn't put up big numbers, but I think he's been the most consistent since he started getting playing time here in Nashville. Again, he's not, putting up 1,300 yards and he's not scoring 10 touchdowns a year. But what he's doing, what they're asking him to do, he's doing it consistently.
No doubt, no doubt. And as I'll use an analogy, my guy Deuce Staley, he was the Eagles running back coach. I remember 2017, and he was talking about a guy that came out of Wisconsin by the name of Corey Clement. And he was like, man, he's like that. Corey Clement is like that Honda Accord in the hood. You know what I mean? And that's what Nick Westbrook Ikini is like. And that it's not the best looking car. It's not the most flashy car, and it's not one that you'll use to pull the ladies with, but it will always get you where you need to go.
I can tell you, Teron, you are
reliable.
It's ringing a bell for me because I had the Honda Accord. I was that guy, and I was definitely not pulling the ladies because of that. That was my first car.
I was that guy too, man. I had an old 81 Honda Civic, and it used to get me from Philly to New York all the time. It didn't pull the ladies all the time, but it got me where I needed to go.
Never left me hanging. It never left me hanging on the side of the road. I'll say that.
Yeah, and that's Nick. That's NWI. That's who he is, man. That's the guy. Like, he's not going to consistently make the flashy play, but he's the guy that will occasionally do that. But every week on game day, when you need somebody to go down there as the gunner or to make a big play, make a catch or something like that, he's going to do it for you. And I think that's the old reliable factor that he brings. And it's just he's pretty fun to think about, because I go back to when he was a rookie, and I remember I used to joke with him. I'm like, yo, man, you got to stop getting into those physical altercations with the football. Don't fight it. You know what I mean? That's your friend. Catch it, corral it, cherish it. And just seeing him go from that to where he is now, it's a good story that hasn't really been told. And, I tip my cap to him.
Now let's switch to the other side of the football, the secondary. Where do you think Roger McQuarrie fits in this? Because he, like Nick Westbrook Ikine, whatever you ask him to do, he goes out and do it, and he's consistent at it. He isn't the biggest guy, but what he is a pit bull. And he's going to give you everything he has. And he's played very well since, becoming a Tennessee Titan.
Yeah. No, I definitely have to look at that with him and playing that nickel position, and not only playing as a pass defender. Like, he's a very willing guy to come up and support against the run. Like, he's going to throw his body in there and mix it up, and sometimes even set the edge when he's asked to do it. And that's commendable for a guy. And, you've seen him in person. He's not the most, physically imposing or gifted player. You know what I mean? He's basically your average size NFL guy, but the heart that he has within him is something that, is beyond the height and weight that we see on paper. So, yeah, I mean, you look at him and just what he brings to that nickel position. He's a solid defender. He's one of four guys, who hasn't given up a touchdown in over 100 targets or whatnot. One of those other guys just happens to be L'Jarius Sneed as well. So, you got two of the four guys that haven't done that. So I think that secondary, it definitely has improved. And, it's going to be interesting watching how all that plays out.
We're talking to Teron Davenport. And Teron, another situation people are wondering about how it's going to play out is in San Francisco. I just saw, it's amazing these random clips that come up, but I saw one of Deebo Samuel absolutely going full throttle on a treadmill. Which it looked a little dangerous. Like, I've seen people wipe out on the treadmill. I've wiped out on the treadmill. It's like everybody in the whole workout place stops and like, oh, are you okay? Like, I've been that guy, right? Like, your headphones go one way, your phone goes the other way. It's bouncing all over the place. But like, Deebo survived. But like, I'm not sure. If people are wondering, can they make this work? They spent the big money on McCaffrey. Ayuk's contract has got to be addressed, and then eventually Deebo's contract's got to be addressed. So how is that going to play out?
Yeah, and the contract you didn't mention is Brock Purdy. His is going to have to be addressed.
And I'll tie this into our Mets love, Teron. Brock Purdy, I saw the a million tweets that you get on Bobby Bonilla Day, which was yesterday, where the Mets Bobby Bonilla is what, 70 years old now, or
72, I think. Yeah.
He got paid his annual salary of over $1 million a year, which he gets for another, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years,
2035?
2035.
Yeah. Well,
He
let me say this.
he makes more than Brock Purdy.
Yeah, well, let me say this also, because Ken Griffey Jr. is still getting paid from the Reds, and for all the the Braves fans, because I know we're in Braves country, Bruce Sutter was getting paid for quite some time also.
Yes, he was.
There's a math and a science to it. We don't have the time to get into it, but I'm not going to let people just bag on my Mets. It's just not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
there you go,
yeah,
TD.
Yeah,
tell him.
But anyhow, you're right though. That is a lot to work out. And, talking to Rand, he said there's a guy, and I remember when I was covering the 49ers, Parag Marate, he's a wizard when it comes to cap management and just making all that stuff fit. So they're going to be fine. They're going to have to figure some things out, obviously. That treadmill, though, with Deebo Samuel, I mean, he was hitting 21 miles an hour on that, so he definitely was going fast. And I would imagine this is going to be a big year for him. You look at everything in the formula, right? You got Kittle who has to get his touches, but then don't forget, they drafted my man Ricky Pearsall out of Florida, so now you have in the first round, mind you. So there's a lot of guys that got to be fed, and Brock Purdy's going to have to get his John Stockton on, man, and just have buku assists because there's so many guys that have to be taken care of.
DMase, how do you see that playing out with those guys?
Man, it's a good problem to have. But I think first and foremost, you got to sign Ayuk back. I like Deebo Samuel, but eventually his body's going to start breaking down. If it hadn't started breaking down already, he's a hybrid running back, receiver. The things they do with him, they can do with McCaffrey. Ayuk brings a different dimension. He's outside, inside. He's more of your true wide receiver. Now Debo's a beast, but you can only play that way for so long. So to me, they got to get it solved with Ayuk, and I'm not sure if Debo is going to be there after next season. I'm really not, because you got to sign Ayuk back. You drafted Pearsall. You got to get younger at that position. Hell of a player, but you got to know playing that position at that style of play, how he plays, he's only going to be able to hold up, maybe another year or two playing that matter. Now, he's a physical person, but man, oh man, he's just to me, he's a running back that they split out wide that knows how to catch the football, because once he gets the football in his hands, man, he's hell trying to bring down.
Yeah, no, I agree. Long-term wise, I think Debo is going to be gone. Willie, when you asked the question, I thought you were talking about for this year.
Oh, no, not necessarily. But yeah, I think this year, long-term. Because Purdy, you have to enjoy the fact when you have the quarterback still making less than Bobby Bonilla just got paid.
Yeah. And I'll say this, too. Keep an eye on the George Kittle situation. He just happens to live here in Nashville, so you never know what could happen.
Wow, that is something to think about. He does make some serious appearances on the Jumbotron at Predators games. That's for sure. He's not shy. For everybody, most people know this if you listen to our show, but he is very close friends with Philip Forsberg, who is locked in long-term here. Their wives are really good friends. He lives here in the off season. Boy, wouldn't that be something if that ever came into play?
Now, TD, how do you think this, now that we've gotten through sort of this wave of the draft and free agency and then OTAs, so every team now is pretty much holding their breath, hoping that none of their players get hurt in their workouts or anything else. But how do you realistically see the AFC South now that sort of everything is in place? Teams are pretty much set going into camp. Now, there may be some guys that they're going to add here and there, but we know for the most part, there's no big name guys coming into nobody's locker room at this point in time. So as the rosters are set right now, how do you see the AFC South?
Yeah, I think, look, you have to look at the Texans and say that they're the team to beat. They're coming off a division title. And also, you look at the additions they made. I mean, everything is pointing up for them. And you take Azeez Ansari, you take Danico Autry off the Titans and put them on the Texans. I mean, that's just – and I know the Titans made some good moves in the offseason, but I think Houston is the team to beat, not to mention, adding Stephon Diggs and Danielle Hunter, and they lost Jonathan Grenard, but still, Danielle Hunter is a premium pass rusher. So I would say the Texans, and then it's just a mix. Every roster has question marks, right? Jacksonville, I think you got to question, their heart, the way they collapsed down the stretch last year, and just, some of the things that happened with them. And then I think you look at the Colts and just say, okay, will Anthony Richardson stay healthy? Is that something that's going to happen? And the Titans, Will Levis is everything. All things are pointing to, hey, man, this is going to be the franchise guy, but we don't know if he's going to be the franchise guy. And if he doesn't, then that organization is in trouble. So the sure shot, the team that has the best chance is clearly the Texans. But, that's why you play the game, right? And you never have paper champions be the actual champion. You rarely do. We'll put it that way.
Now, two quarterbacks that I am truly going to be paying attention to in the AFC South. And when I say these two quarterbacks, don't think I'm comparing them as far as their ability to play the game, but I'm comparing them because they're both going to have the same problems, I think, as the season goes on. CJ Stroud and Will Levis. I'm not comparing them as far as play style, because I think CJ Stroud is he's above Will Levis, but I say they're going to have the same problem because of the receiver room, getting guys the football. You see what Nico Collins was able to do last year. He's the number one guy, but then you bring in Stephon Diggs, who has been a number one guy for pretty much his whole career. Then you had the young guy that got hurt, Tank Dale. He was playing phenomenal before he got hurt. Now all three of these guys are here. They're healthy. How do you, as a quarterback, how do you distribute the football and keep everybody healthy? And I compare Will Levis because it's the same thing. You got Calvin Ridley, who's your number one. Now you have DJ, you have Hopkins, and then you have Tyler Boyd. So to me, how do you figure this out as a quarterback, the distribution, keeping everybody happy? That's why I say CJ Stroud and Will Levis both have sort of the same problems in their offense. How do I keep these playmakers happy?
Yeah, and that's the big thing. And you can take it a step further with the Texans. Dalton Schultz is a pretty established pass catcher, and we know that Josh Wiley and Chiga Conquo combo, there's going to be expectations there. And I think this is where Will Levis, he really would be smart to rely on his resources. And Ryan Tannehill, I would talk to him a lot about how he was able to find that success. That year they had a 2,000-yard rusher, they had a 1,000-yard receiver, 16 yards short of another one. And, Jonnu Smith had 700 to 800 yards. It was all about, and talking to the receiver coach at the time, Rob Moore, what they loved about Tannehill was he didn't see numbers on a jersey. He just saw who was open. And whoever was open, that's who he got the ball to. And if I was Will Levis, my answer would be, when you come to me, hey, listen, get open and I'll find you. And just kind of leave it at that. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's what Tannehill did, and that's what they loved about him. So I would adopt that same mindset. And we know from watching last year, like there were times where it was like, you know what? You only live once. DeAndre Hopkins is down there. Let me just throw it. And, they came up with big plays, but I think he could get away from that this year because there is an assortment of guys to throw the ball to.
Looking forward to when things crank back up here soon. And Teron, I'm also looking forward to Saturday because that's when Edwin Diaz is eligible to come back. And my stomach can't take a whole lot more. I feel like I'm getting air sick when the plane gets all turbulent. Some of these relievers the Mets are throwing out there, it is getting hairy. But we're surviving. Yeah. We're surviving. One game at a time. 4 more games to go.
It is a mess. But I'll say this. If you remember, we first started talking about the baby Mets. And the guy that I kept saying was watch out for, Mark Vientos. And, he's continuing to just make me proud. I'm sitting here with my arms crossed and a big smile like a proud papa. I'll say. You said,
Teron did this. I know exactly where we were, too. We were at Titans training camp, and he was saying, I was talking about these other guys, and he was saying, watch out for Mark Vientos. He is the guy that has blossomed here. So it is nice to see some good young youth talent getting in there. So, Teron, we've had our Mets moment, as we do every week. We'll talk to you again next week. Have a great 4th of July, and we'll talk to you soon.
For sure. Appreciate you guys. Take it easy.
All right. Teron Davenport, ESPN.com. And of course, you hear him all over our station, has the best when it comes to Titans discussion. Always great coverage of the Titans. Speaking of great football talk, we're going back to back today. Tim Hasselbeck, he's got his schedule. Of course, this is 4th of July week. We're getting all the best stuff in 3 shows. So Tim will join us. We had to actually punt Tim last week after the Soros story went nuts. So that almost never happens. But so Tim is nice enough to join us at 1:30. That's coming up in a couple minutes. So stick around. Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game, talking with Tim next.
sexy, huh?
I hope you're ready. Tim Hasselbeck is with us here on 102.5 The Game. Great to catch up with him. Willy Donegan, Derek Mason here with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Tim, let's start it here just because, it's kind of loose in the summer. If I were to ask you, when you walk into your team meeting or when you bump into your players during this time of the year, how many of them would maybe bring up to you, hey, did you see what the Predators did yesterday with the free agent craziness that took place? What percentage of your team might follow the Predators with any kind of level like that?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest, like in terms of how dialed into hockey.
Yeah, because they obviously created a huge buzz throughout the league yesterday with a huge binge of free agent signings of heavy name players like Steven Stamkos. I don't know what the equivalent would be, DMase in a football, but that would be like signing a Deebo Samuel or somebody like that, a huge accomplished player. It's some people made the reference of Tom Brady going from the Patriots to the Buccaneers. It was that kind of thing on the hockey level. Now, obviously, it doesn't have the same spotlight, but I'm just curious if that makes it into your circles in your football circles.
What's interesting is so my brother Matthew's daughter Mallory, who's a student athlete at Boston College. She plays lacrosse at Boston College. They just won a national championship. Like, she's super dialed into sports, all that stuff. She has a summer internship with the Preds, and we were somewhere yesterday, and she's like her phone is blowing up with all of her friends and just people that she knows and things like that, that are like, oh my gosh, like Preds are going crazy today. So like all day yesterday, she's, communicating about all of their moves and everything like that. And so I would say like maybe I'm underestimating, the reach, just knowing like what her interaction was yesterday with, and I'm talking about like friends from Boston, that are hockey fans, college hockey fans, that are, seeing players that they know, get signed or drafted. And so I think that, maybe I'm underestimating it. Maybe it's the kind of that summertime, fog a little bit, a bit of a lull sports wise, but yeah, like, look, I do think that, maybe I think the casual fan even got reached. That's probably the best way for me to say it.
We talk with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst. Now, Tim, I don't know if you've been following this whole NFL lawsuit that has gone on, where the NFL has to repay billions of dollars. If you have, how do you believe in, and I'm sure you've talked with people if you have really dove into this, how do you think this affects the NFL moving forward, that this lawsuit was out there and they lost the lawsuit? Now, I think each team has to pay back X amount of dollars, to sort of settle the lawsuit. But how do you think this affects the NFL moving forward?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, and I've followed it, DMase, but like I a little bit like, I think it happens a lot of times in, some of these off the field, storylines in terms of, whether it's an ownership group bidding on a team and who's part of it. Like, I probably, like most fans, eventually tire of it, right? So like it's really interesting at first, and then all of a sudden it drags on a little bit, and I think sometimes the interest can wane. And so I think that I've felt like that following the story. How do I think it affects the NFL going forward? I think it's breaking trust, right? Like I think ultimately, fans are generally smart enough, and I think that when people look around and they think, like, what does it cost for me to watch NFL football games? And they realize like what they are spending in order to see as many NFL games as they can. And then you find information out where you're like, wait a second, like I could have been watching these games and all of these games, no matter what market I was in, for a fraction of the price that I've been getting charged for it. Like, I just think it starts to break trust. Now, does that mean that people won't tune in? I think for some it will, but I think, ultimately people love watching football. It's baked into our culture. But I do think that, eventually you stop believing and you stop trusting the National Football League.
Yeah. So, and I can say that the NFL is sort of one of those companies that is recession proof or lawsuit proof, that no matter what happens, they are still going to survive. Why? Because we love the NFL so much that even if they do lose a, $1 billion+ lawsuit, they're still going to be able to survive and not just survive, but they're going to still rack in money like an ATM machine.
Well, I mean, DMase, your point about it being recession proof, like there's nothing that proved that more than the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Because it changed the way we live. It's going to change the way we live for a decade. And the NFL is like, yeah, that's cool. That's cute. Okay. That's great. But we're not giving up. We have so much influence in powerful cities and we generate so much money in all these economies. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep playing because we're going to get our TV money. And so we are not playing. And listen, college football was kind of recession proof, but some of those conferences didn't play. Whereas the NFL was like, yeah, that's funny, but we're playing, right? Bubble. No, we're not doing a bubble. We're not doing that. We're playing football. We're getting our TV money. We are completely recession proof. And honestly, we just have so much influence, in terms of every local government, every state government, that we're really going to do whatever we want.
Yeah, it seems that way. Another question here, the quarterbacks. Obviously, the AAVs are going up astronomical. I think I saw, they were doing a comparison to quarterbacks, what they made 15 years ago. We talk about top quarterbacks compared to what the guys are making now. And it's damn near, if not double, close to triple. Do you see it stopping? Because as we go, I mean, Dak Prescott is next. You have other quarterbacks that are in line for these huge contracts. I know we had a few signed, Lawrence, guys like that, but now some of these big contracts are really coming up. Do you think there's going to be a cap on the number of what a quarterback can make? Because listen, in 5-10 years, we're going to see, if not, we're going to see a $70 million quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be, because we're going to continue to see the cap grow, right? I mean, the reality, too, is in terms of the revenue that the NFL is going to continue to generate, especially with legalized gambling, the cap is going up. It's just going to continue to rise. It is. TV money's not going anywhere. There's different avenues in terms of streaming. They're capturing, more eyeballs in terms of the audience, especially, overseas, all that stuff. And so the thing I would say is I don't. And then, as the quarterbacks, salaries have gone up, I think we also need to recognize that alongside that, the rules have changed, right? And so quarterbacks are going to play, because of the rules, they're going to play longer than they did before. Whereas a running back's lifespan hasn't changed. A corner's lifespan hasn't changed. A safety's lifespan, in terms of playing at a high level, hasn't changed. But quarterback has. Look, Troy Aikman retired. It was concussions and a back injury. Steve Young, I can still see the hit, Aeneas Williams, put on him in a football game. The reality is you can't do that anymore. And so now Drew Brees plays till he's 40 and Brady and Manning and Aaron Rodgers, and Kirk Cousins is 37 years old. So in the change of the rules, now how long somebody lasts and play at a high level at quarterback that also has just been skewed. Like that's grown at a different rate. And so I think that's part of the reason why more organizations are comfortable saying, like, yeah, we'll invest in you because you might not be an 8-year player. Like, you could be a 15-year player for us.
Tim Hasselbeck is with us. Tim, before we let you go, this is a tricky question, but it's I want to try to keep it somewhat generic, but I'm going to ask you about John Gruden. And like we were talking about with the other lawsuit, I'm not into all the legalese about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going through pages and pages trying to figure out exactly what's happening. But I think about this in a broader sense. John Gruden was once a pretty darn good coach and a really good announcer. Yeah. And he has been on the sideline, and we know why, right? He made, let's just put it in a big, broad box, he made some mistakes that have cost him. And at some point, I think that it's fair to ask, has he paid his price? Can he get back into doing a job that he was really good at, whether it's a coach or maybe in the booth someday? Hockey is struggling with this right now with Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville, who have been suspended for a long time, and rightfully so. They had to pay a penalty for a mistake they made with something that happened, and hockey was a big story. But, after a certain amount of time, it's like Michael Vick. Eventually, people said, you know what? He paid a big price, but he shouldn't be banned for life. What do you think would happen with Gruden here? Do you think at some point he will get back into the football world?
I do, and I just think the appetite for forgiveness is way more likely, coaching again than being on TV, right? Like I just, I think that, like to your point, like Michael Vick, he kind of, like you just think about, he goes to jail, comes back, he's playing football. Like now he's on TV, right? But I don't think that there's an appetite for that in terms of Gruden. And look, I think there are a lot of people that have, I think, as you said, it was probably a good way to say it, just, made mistakes, right? And done things that they wish that they hadn't. And I think for Gruden, I mean, look, there are coaches that have, guys that have, DUIs that like didn't sit out at all,
Right.
And so, it's interesting because I do think that John Gruden is somebody that, had a significant impact on the National Football League. Right? Like I think there are some coaches where you can look at them and say, man, like they just had, like, yeah, they were successful as a coach, but they also had, a very unique impact on the game. Like I think you could say the same for coaches like Bill Walsh or Joe Gibbs or Bill Parcells and Sean Payton and, obviously Bill Belichick. Like there are Pete Carroll. Like there are coaches that you're like, they definitely made an impact on the National Football League, whether it was X's and O's or, how they related to players, whatever it may be. And like Gruden fits in that box. Like he absolutely does. And so, and none of the guys that I mentioned are perfect. So, right.
Like for example, Peyton had to sit out; he was suspended, and then he had to work his way back in. And so every case is different, right? But depending on the circumstances. But I do think sometimes I think you have a really strong public push by some people who have said this guy should never coach again or whatever, right? But at some point, I think we have to look at it when a certain amount of time has gone by.
No doubt. I mean, think about Greg Williams. Greg Williams. And I think part of the reason there was never really an appetite for Greg Williams to get back in is just, he kind of had a bit of an abrasive personality, probably wasn't, always great with certain media members and, probably represented himself in a way that came across as kind of a high ego guy and those types of things. And so when it comes time to, I guess, hoping for some forgiveness or people to say, give him some grace as he gets back in, like it just wasn't there. Like it didn't exist. Whereas I think that whether it's somebody that's not as high profile or whether it's somebody that, has a lot of allies, in the media world or, that type of thing, then yeah, I think it had an influence. And to be honest, in some ways it's no different than Hall of Fame voting, right? Mm-hmm. Like why, think about Terrell Owens. Like, what? Like, that's crazy, to think that he went through what he went through in terms of Hall of Fame. And then there's other people that weren't nearly as good of players, but, were fantastic in terms of building relationships in their local media. And look at how that impacted that voting.
It's a broad topic for sure. We're out of time for now, but Tim, great to catch up with you. Have a great 4th of July weekend with your family, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. See you guys.
All right, Tim Hasselbeck joining us here on 102.5 The Game. We're back to wrap up the show here in just a moment. We'll look ahead to Stillman and Company. You're listening to 102.5 The Game. Coming down the home stretch here on Willy and DMase. Got a little Saturday Night Fever going to end up the show. You think Jared knows this song, DMase?
I think he does.
You think he does?
I think he does. I think he has to.
I think he's with it when it comes to the Tramps. This song never fails to pop up somewhere, right? Somewhere
Somebody's
in your
playing
near
it.
future, this song is going to pop up and people will be moving on the dance floor for sure. Hey, the Sounds will be getting after it tonight as well. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan, as it'll be the Sounds and the Memphis Redbirds. You got to love that. Pre-game at 6:50. Sounds playing some pretty good ball lately. They won last night. And, of course, Nick being a Cardinal fan, he might be paying a little extra attention to the Redbirds when they're playing the Sounds.
Indeed.
Cardinals, Mets battling for the wild card. Just saying. First pitch at 7:05. Coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan app and 949thefan.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, Caudle Vet Clinic, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Okay. DMase, you brought up a really interesting question. I've been meaning to bring this topic up, but the hockey stuff is kind of
take precedence.
It's been taking precedent. But the lawsuit that's going on with the Sunday Ticket, all of the legal battles, and it's being appealed by the NFL, and we're talking about a lot of money that was awarded to the people, basically.
$4.7 billion.
That's a lot of coin.
Residential class damages and
Yeah.
$96 million in commercial class damages. Whew, it's a lot of money.
But this is one thing I thought of while this was going on, and that is what should the Sunday Ticket be worth? Because on one hand, you're like, this is America. If you don't like the price, just don't pay it. And, that's your decision. you can charge kind of whatever you want. But that's sort of the essence of this lawsuit is they've been overcharging people for this, and especially from a sports bar perspective. I have purchased the NFL Sunday ticket some seasons, and then other seasons I pass on it. And the NFL, this is what they kind of say is, look, we're keeping it free. You know, every Sunday, you don't have to have cable, and you can see a game at noon, and you can see a game at 3, and then you can see a game at 7. You get 3 games every Sunday. So what more we're going to make this other package a premium package to protect the rights holders that keep the games free for you. So I get both sides of it. I'm not enough. We'll let the judge and the jury decide how this pans out. But it kind of gets me wondering, like, what should it be worth? The NFL Sunday ticket. Like, because we're in a world now with podcasts and everything. If you are a hardcore St. Louis sports person living in Nashville, you don't have to listen to us. You can go on your phone and get St. Louis sports all day, every day, and listen to the local stations out of St. Louis. You couldn't do that 20 years ago. And now it's like, whatever city you live in, you can follow your team. You buy the Sunday ticket package.
Yeah.
You watch your team every week, and you might as well be in your old hometown.
Yeah, but people want it to be back the way it used to be, man, where you could just flip on a channel, 2, 4, 7, whatever, and you can see different teams play. You didn't have to buy a package to watch different teams, play, especially, your home team, because sometimes, some places
they protect the local territory.
Absolutely. Right? So, I mean, is it too much to pay each and every year? I mean, if you are a football enthusiast, then you don't think about it. I just want to watch football. But if you are a person that sort of, likes football some, you
probably just take what's on.
Yeah, right? You take what's on. You feel that, maybe I am getting charged too much. Maybe it should be set up different. I don't know.
I really see it as from a sports bar's perspective, from the business, that what you get charged to have that service is important, because I know as a patron on a Sunday, if I'm going out somewhere to eat,
you want to be able to watch all games.
Do you have the games on?
Yeah.
Do you have all the games on? Because I want to watch the games, and I want to watch a particular game. And if I don't get it, I'm going to go to a place that does have it. So I think it should be. I think the sports bar part of this might be different than what's in your living room, but at the same time, we're now conditioned. If you're a diehard Patriots fan living in Nashville, you want to be able to watch the Patriots every week.
So you got to buy it.
Yeah. So what's a fair price is what it comes down to.
I don't even know what it. I don't know what it costs.
I mean, some people would say, well, that's not that much money, but other people would say, well, no, I got a tight budget, man. I can't afford to pay.
Well, it's Sunday ticket because let me see. I'm trying to figure out because Sunday ticket is different from the red zone is different from Sunday ticket, right?
Yeah,
or the red zone was the Sunday, or is the Sunday ticket sort of?
I've seen it where in order to get the red zone, you have to get the Sunday ticket, or you might have a separate price to buy the red zone. And the red zone, that's a phenomenon too. You can sit there and you look at your watch, and you're like, man, I've been sitting on this couch for 2 straight hours.
Exactly. Just watching everything.
The red zone.
Yeah.
I haven't moved because there's no commercials or anything.
Exactly. You just go from one game to the other. It just, it just picks up as it doesn't go into a commercial sort of type of thing.
I think the first couple years, maybe they gave it to you. And now I think it's part of a package you have to buy, right? You don't just get the red zone with regular cable.
I don't know how it works. Maybe I need to see
package, I believe.
Yeah. I think
so. That's red zone, NFL package, all of that's together. So I wonder how much that runs. It has to be over $100.
Oh, it is.
I know Red Zone and NFL Network. If you have I think Xfinity, that's part of the sports package. I think Sunday tickets by itself. That's with YouTube TV. That's by itself.
Okay.
And recently, YouTube TV just got the rights to be able to put it exclusively on their thing. Although I think I know Can you still get it on DirecTV? I think you can.
That's for restaurants, I believe. Okay. It's like more of the wholesale style because the restaurants have multiple televisions.
Yeah, I don't think DirecTV can you get Red Zone?
No, I think it's just solely for restaurants.
Oh, yeah, you used to. For a while,
you could. DirecTV had the Red Zone.
So you had to get it. So it's an ongoing thing. I know if I'm an owner and I just saw this case go down, I'm like, wait a minute.
So
I gotta pay how much?
So does that mean all of us get checks are probably $5 or something like that.
I'm wondering.
I said
I'm not,
50. I did it for one season. I got $50 back. That's all I asked.
Did you? Oh yeah. Just give me $50 back.
College discount.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
I take $50.
Better than nothing.
I'm $50 richer if they give
Yeah,
it to me.
Better than nothing.
I take that.
All right, we're out of here. DMase and I will be back on the show tomorrow, our final show before the 4th of July weekend festivities begin. So we'll have a lot of fun. Jonathan Marchessault is going to face the media tomorrow. We will have Jonathan Hutton. We might have another interview or two up our sleeve, so make sure you tune in. And Stillman & Company is coming up next.
Be love and love of your people. Happy Tuesday,